Chapter 1786. Felwood's heart skipped a beat. Dozens of times more work than a private airport? What was Qin Zhao trying to do? Of course, I can't give this project to your company alone, Qin Zhao said. But I'll try my best to give you the project as long as it's within your company's capabilities. Felwood's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Qin Zhao didn't tell him, but Felwood felt that Qin Zhao didn't tell him because it was a trade secret. But the few words Qin Zhao had revealed were enough to shock him. If he could take over this project, even if it wasn't all of it, after finishing this job, he would be able to retire. As for Qin Zhao lying to him, Felwood had never considered this problem. For one, Qin Zhao didn't need to lie to him at all. Moreover, in the past 2 years, Qin Zhao had been giving him all kinds of projects. Qin Zhao was now his company's biggest and most important client. Suspecting Qin Zhao was akin to digging his own grave. However, he couldn't figure out what project Qin Zhao had that was dozens of times more than an airport. It seemed like he had to change his company's development strategy. Felwood thought. Qin Zhao didn't stay at the construction site for long. He looked around and left with his child. This is where we came from yesterday. This area is the territory of the withered tree ghouls. If you go any further, you will be surrounded by a large number of withered tree ghouls. It will be very troublesome if you fall into their territory. Ruan Faxi pointed at a valley in front of them. We'll go from the outside, West said. There's no need to enter the valley. Delin had been following the team, but he was in the middle. This was to prevent him from running away. Delin was half-hearted, but his role in the team couldn't be doubted. Not only did he know the terrain of this area like the back of his hand, but he also had a special spell called the Spirit of Guidance. Of course, this spell had nothing to do with Buddhism. It was a type of prophecy spell. It could tell the correct direction through divination. However, this spell had a disadvantage. If the same question was asked repeatedly, the mana consumption would double. For example, they were looking for the Nordic giants. The first time they used this spell to ask for the correct direction, it didn't consume much mana. The second time he asked the same question, the magic power would double. The third time, it would double again and so on. If a person's magic is strong enough, they can find almost anyone or anything. But no one could use it infinitely. Doring's magic power was very average. He couldn't be compared to the members of the Magic Association. Compared to ordinary spiritualists, Delin's strength was also very ordinary. Therefore, he could only use the Spirit of Guidance 3 times at most. Doring had already used the Spirit of Guidance once before. Therefore, he still had 2 chances to use the Guidance Spirit. This was also why West had approached him and offered him such a high price in the first place. $200,000 for 1 month's time. One had to know that even hiring a spiritualist would only cost slightly more than an ordinary person. More, were the tooth of the fire dragon. It can dispel some of the cold. Ruan Faxi tossed a pendant to Moore. In their group, Mo Air and Rissa were the youngest. Risa could absorb the heat around her, so she didn't need to worry about catching a cold at all. Moore, on the other hand, was a big kid who was still growing. He'd caught a cold last night. However, Moore always had the mentality that he was a man and an adult. He felt that everyone in the group should be treated the same. He would eat what others ate. He would use what others used. But he clearly didn't have the ability, yet he liked to show off. More wear it, West said. Otherwise, I'll call the president and have him come and take you away. But I'll wear it. Suddenly, Doring noticed the tooth of the fire dragon hanging around Moore's neck. Doring's heart skipped a beat. It was faintly emitting pure flame power. Could it really be a dragon tooth? If it really was a dragon tooth, these guys were too extravagant. They actually hung the dragon tooth around their necks like a pendant. If given to an alchemist, this dragon tooth could definitely be made into a high-quality magic tool. These Americans were indeed a bunch of nouveau riche. They didn't have any ability at all, but they were rich. Doring didn't know that the dragon tooth hanging around Moore's neck was of the lowest quality. It was the kind that nobody wanted. Ruan Faxi couldn't be bothered with magic at all. He simply polished it and pierced it to use as a pendant. The association didn't have too many dragon parts. For example, each of them was wearing a tight-fitting dragon scale undergarment. who didn't have 1 or 2 dragon magic tools. But even if he said that to Doring, he probably wouldn't believe it either. Doring's eyes flashed. He had to find an opportunity to get this dragon tooth pendant. The fog seems to have dispersed today. Yes, it's much easier to walk. Everyone was in a better mood. Nobody liked walking in the fog anymore. Because of the fog, even their companions could only see blurry figures, which was a huge problem for them. Their faces were covered in mist after walking for a while. It was very uncomfortable. It seems to be dry around here. There should be some firewood. Why don't we rest here today and catch some game? We haven't had cooked food for days, Gaia suggested. Although compressed food could also fill one's stomach, not everyone could stand the boredom of compressed food. Gaia, Klaus, and the Lightning team were retired soldiers. They could barely tolerate it, but the others couldn't. Wes thought for a moment. All right, then we'll rest here today. Doring was completely speechless at these Americans. They had only walked for half a day and they were already stopping. With their speed, when would they be able to find the giants? Doring looked down on West and the others even more. But this was good. Demas had already sent him a message. He had already contacted the Sacred Flame sect. The slower they walked, the earlier they could meet the people from the Sacred Flame sect. It was impossible for this motley crew to fight against the people from the Sacred Flame sect. That group of Sacred Flame sect disciples were all extremely vicious and evil. They were perverse and vicious, and their methods were extremely cruel. As long as they were their enemies, there was almost no one left alive. Doring looked forward to seeing their expressions when they met the Sacred Flame sect. Chapter 1787. Today, Portia followed Qinzhao to Seagate again. The people from Seagate reported the progress of the yacht to Qinzhao. Of course, there wasn't much progress. The yacht had just officially started construction. However, the person in charge of Seagate invited Qinzhao to visit their headquarters warmly. However, Qinzhao wasn't really interested. He had to go all the way to their company in Italy. So, Qinzhao could only say that he was busy. After leaving Seagate, Portia stared at Qinzhao speechlessly. Boss, did you invest all your money in luxury goods? Qinzhao's Mirror Lake Villa was only worth $10 to $20 million at most. The private airport and private jet were still in preparation. However, Qinzhao had actually invested more than $300 million into this private yacht. Portia couldn't imagine how luxurious a yacht worth $300 million was. More importantly, Qinzhao already had a yacht, the Hydra. In Portia's eyes, the Hydra was unimaginably luxurious. But the Hydra was only $80 million. How luxurious would a new yacht that was 4 times more expensive than the Hydra be? I'm rich, so I can do whatever I want, Qinzhao said matter-of-factly. Up until now, Portia hadn't seen many of Qinzhao's valuable properties. Marina Restaurant was one, but it clearly couldn't support all of Qinzhao's top luxury goods. She knew that Qinzhao had a brewery, but to Portia, a brewery alone wasn't enough. In fact, the brewery was Qinzhao's biggest source of income. Dashin beer had already spread across the entire North American market with Mara Supermarket. Of course, the main market was still in California. The California beer market was completely dominated by Dashin. North America was also constantly eroding the market share of the former beer giants. The international brands had contacted Denver a few times, hoping to buy Dashin beer. Of course, it ended in failure. Chen Zhao sold the golden chicken that laid eggs and then invested a large amount of cash that he didn't know where to go. Chen Zhao was either crazy or stupid. The only thing that could beat Dashin beer now was its production capacity. But no one could solve this problem. Dashin beer's production capacity wasn't limited by food. It was limited by the water of Mirror Lake. The only water source of Mirror Lake was the small waterfall hanging in front of the villa. The flow of this waterfall was basically the largest output of Dashin beer. Of course, so far, Dashin beer had not reached its true production capacity. Ever since Mountain Beer's production doubled 2 months ago, Chen Zhao's income also doubled. Denver had also transformed from an unemployed man who had been driven out of his home by Happy Dollar Beer into a billionaire. Even if he only held 5% of the shares, this 5% of shares, whether in terms of value or long-term stable income, was enough to make him a billionaire. Of course, he didn't completely trust Denver. But apart from 1 or 2 spies, Qin Zhao had almost no restrictions on Denver. He and Qin Zhao were now bound by benefits, so he wouldn't do anything that would harm Qin Zhao's interests. Recently, Win Nip had been trying to charm Qin Zhao again. She even asked Fei Lai to give him pillow talk. He wanted to buy some shares of Mountain Beer and even encouraged Qin Zhao to list Mountain Beer. Fortunately, Fei Lai knew what to do. After all, they were family now. She wouldn't do something that would harm her family's interests for Win Nip. The value of Dashan Beer's shares was limitless. If Mountain Beer went public, it would hurt Qin Zhao the most because he was the absolute owner now. This was because he was the absolute shareholder now. Once Mountain Beer went public, his shares would be diluted. He would inevitably lose control of Mountain Beer. He would also lose long-term stable dividends. So, Qin Zhao definitely wouldn't let Mountain Beer go public. Of course, Amira and Denver as shareholders also tried their best to avoid going public. Going public would also harm their interests. This made Qin Zhao a bit annoyed with Win Nip. Of course, no matter what, they were family. Qin Zhao wouldn't turn against Win Nip. It was just that after being harassed a few times, Qin Zhao didn't even want to pick up Win Nip's calls. "Boss, where are we going now?" "Find a place to eat lunch," Qin Zhao said. As expected, this guy had nothing to do every day. Other than buying things everywhere, he only did food. Portia and Qin Zhao found an open-air restaurant. Not long after they sat down, Qin Zhao met familiar people. It was Stephen's daughter, Daly Moore, and Nawat Singh. Daly Moore, Nawat Singh, Qin Zhao greeted. The two also saw Qin Zhao. They went up and sat beside him. "Chen, long time no see." Daly Moore's expression was pretty good. It seemed that she was in a good mood recently. "Qin, congratulations. The movie you invested in is a big hit." Kidnapping's global box office had already surpassed $3 billion. It had already slowed down. The only question now was whether it could break $4 billion. As Stephen's daughter, Daly Moore's company was Computer Special Effects. Most of her business was related to Hollywood. As a result, many Hollywood-related companies came to her recently to please her. They wanted to get close to her father. The company's performance increased greatly. Daly Moore was also very famous. Of course, she was more jealous of the huge returns that Qin Zhao's tens of millions of investment had gotten. In less than a year, Qin Zhao's investment of $30 million had gotten more than 20 times the investment. But she also knew that her funds couldn't enter Hollywood. She was only able to develop this secondary industry of movies because of Stephen, who was a mountain. "Miss, you are?" "My personal assistant, Portia," Qin Zhao said. "Portia, this is Daly Moore, and this is Nawat Singh." Portia stood up and went to a nearby seat. She gave the table to Qin Zhao and the two girls. "Nawat, you used weakness mirror on me last time. Let's try again. I want to see if I've improved recently." Nawat Singh remembered that she'd used weakness mirror to borrow Qin Zhao's left arm to teach her sister a hard lesson. "Then I'll have to offend you." Nawat Singh had improved a lot recently. She also wanted to test it on Qin Zhao. Moreover, she had also mastered mirror magic, which was a step further than weakness mirror. 9 Heaven's Divine King. Chapter 1788. Mr. Chen, this time, I won't use weakness mirror. I'll use real mirror magic. No problem. Qin Zhao nodded. Weakness mirror, as the name suggested, was to copy the opponent's weakness and then create a magical connection. Then it would attack the opponent by hurting themselves. Mirror image, on the other hand, was the ability to copy a certain spell of the opponent or a certain part of the opponent's body. Qin Zhao immediately felt a spell approaching him. But it was an invisible spell. It couldn't be seen or touched. He could only sense it. But the moment the spell touched Qin Zhao, it disintegrated. Qin Zhao's non-elemental constitution was effective. Normal directional spells wouldn't be effective against Qin Zhao, unless the directional spell was shockingly powerful. If Nawat's had Tamamo no Mei's power, Qin Zhao's non-elemental constitution wouldn't have any effect. But Nawat's clearly didn't have that power. Nawat's was stunned for a moment. The feeling in her body was so strange. Did it work? Or did it fail? My magic is fading. Navat stood up abruptly and stared at Chen Zhao in shock and anger. What did you do to me? What? Chen Zhao was confused too. What was the meaning of Navat Singer's sudden accusation? My magic is fading. Magic fading. Chen Zhao was confused. Chen Zhao suddenly looked at Navat Singh. Did her spell succeed? Did her sight successfully copy his non-elemental constitution? Dailymore hit Navats with a fireball. I need to confirm something. Navat saw Chen Zhao's eyes. She didn't understand his intentions. But his magic fading didn't seem to be his own doing. Navats nodded at Dailymore. A small fireball rose from Dailymore's finger and she pointed at Navats. The fireball extinguished the moment it neared Navats. As expected. Chen, what's going on? Navats copied some of my abilities. She's immune to most directional spells. Even if it's an area of effect spell, as long as it doesn't exceed the upper limit, it'll disappear, Chen Zhao said. But Navat seems to have gotten rid of her magic too. Naut's lost her magic permanently? How long will the mirror image last? Chen Zhao asked. Half a day, Navat said gloomily. However, she was shocked by Chen Zhao's unimaginable ability. If he could replicate this ability without eliminating his own magic power, he would be almost invincible. Of course, this kind of invincibility was relative. It was definitely useless against Chen Zhao, the original master. Moreover, as the original owner of the non-elemental body, Chen Zhao wasn't affected by the spell's side effects. Even the thought of it was terrifying. No one could hit him with magic, and no one could hurt him with physical attacks. Actually, it wasn't that Chen Zhao wasn't affected by his elemental constitution. It was because his current cultivation system had changed from magical power to immortal power. However, Chen Zhao had only learned the neutral elemental constitution when his magic power had turned into immortal power. That was also a watershed. Navat Singh could replicate a non-elemental constitution. In a sense, she was already very powerful. Sorry Chen, I was rude just now. Navats was very embarrassed. She'd misunderstood and thought that Chen Zhao had done something to her. Not far away, Portia was confused. Weren't Chen Zhao friends with those two women? They seemed to have had an intense argument just now. The woman even stood up in agitation. But then they seemed to have reconciled. Portia filled in the blanks in her head. What relationship did Chen Zhao have with them? They were asking for a breakup fee or something. After lunch, Dailymore and Navat Singh left. Navats, what are you looking at? I saw you studying your arms for half a day. I'm studying the mirror image ability I copied from Chen. Isn't it just eliminating magic and magical power? Not just that. Navat Singh shook her head. This feeling is really addictive. Is it that comfortable? You haven't tried it before, so of course you can't understand, Navat said. When can I learn mirror image? You haven't even learned the weakness yet. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Suddenly, Dailymore slammed on the brakes. Your sister is here again. Dailymore turned to look at Navat Singh. This wasn't the first time. Navat Singh's sister, Okula Singh. She would harass Navat Singh once or twice a month. Of course, every time Okula appeared, he was very good at picking the right place. She would always calculate their route and attack in a place where there was no one. Dailymore often teased Navat Singh, saying that her sister was like a villain in a movie. She would harass her and then run. Okula's wind beasts blocked the front of the car. I won't get out, Dailymore said to Navats. You deal with it yourself. Navat's face was filled with helplessness. After getting off the car, he looked around. Naut's Hingis saw the air flowing around her. At the same time, she saw 3 people hiding behind cover. The 3 of them had different colored cheese flowing around their bodies. One of them seemed to be red, the second was gray, and the third was yellow. Navats could easily identify the 3 of them. Okula, come out. I see you. Navat Singh didn't move. There was no movement. Okula seemed to be planning a sneak attack. Navat Singh was speechless. Her sister had come at the wrong time. She had borrowed power that didn't belong to her. Although Navat Singh didn't have any magic now. But right now, she was unprecedentedly powerful. Navatsing even felt like she was invincible. Okula, Barbara Rush, and Domingo, I know you're hiding behind cover. Come out. Navats shouted again, you want these wind-howling beasts to attack me first, and then you can ambush me? To be honest, Navatsing was surprised that her sister had found Barbara Rush and Domingo. Unfortunately, no matter how many people there were today, she was confident that she could defeat them. The power that didn't belong to her gave her courage. Chapter 1789. Barbara Rush and Dominguez were of the same family as Nawats Shingles and Okula Shingles. But the two of them clearly didn't get along with Navats. Instead, they shared the same interests as her sister, Okula. As a matter of fact, Okula and two others were blocking Navatsing. Nawats Shingles didn't even understand what kind of power she had. Of course, her enemies didn't understand either. After the last few attacks, Okula Singh realized that his sister wasn't that powerful. A few months ago, when Okula fought with her sister, she realized that her sister had an enhancement spell. But after he calmed down, Okula understood. That enhancement spell wasn't her sister's, but a mirror spell. After a few confrontations, Okula confirmed that her sister indeed didn't have any strengthening spells. Okula Shingles was fully prepared for this attack. However, for some unknown reason, his sister actually directly pointed out their intentions. The three of them could only walk out from behind cover. I told you with our strength, there's no need to go through so much trouble, Barbara said unhappily. Barbara's face was filled with radicalism and excitement. Her palms were dyed red, not like normal flames. Instead, it was as bright as fresh blood. Barbara wasn't an elemental witch. She was a fury witch. Actually, it was similar to Tank. She became stronger through anger. The difference was that Tank turned anger into physical strength. Barbara, on the other hand, turned her anger into a scorching flame. Dominguez stood there calmly. Okula Singh wasn't a man who was good at trickery to begin with. Therefore, after being exposed by her own sister, she felt a little embarrassed. She was also a little shy and immediately attacked Navats to cover up her blushing face. A few howling wind beasts charged at Navats. Navats' body lightened and she flew up. Everyone present was stunned by this action, including Navatsing himself. She didn't think that one day she would be able to fly in the air. Navats just wanted to avoid the wind howler beast's attack, but he didn't expect his body to instinctively dodge into the air. Okula, Barbara, and Domingo all raised their heads to look at Navatsing, who was in the air. Disbelief was written all over their faces. But Barbara was the first to react. She aimed both palms at Navats, who was in midair. Go to hell! Bang! Navats' body exploded violently. But after the flames, Navatsing hovered in midair and scathed, looking down at everyone. Barbara Rush didn't believe that her powerful attack couldn't hurt Navatsing. Navatsing didn't have to do anything. Barbara Rush's attack couldn't hurt her at all. Navats didn't even need to defend. It had to be said that the deeper one experienced this powerful ability, the more powerful it was. Navatsing was even more shocked. Navats's heart skipped a beat. Her body seemed to desire the surrounding elements very much. This time, Navats decided to follow her body's instincts. Suddenly, Navats's body began to absorb the elements around her. In that instant, Navats felt her body become very scary. Her body even grew to a height of 2 meters, and the loose clothes on her body also became tight. She couldn't absorb anymore. She would die. Navats was alarmed. She immediately stopped absorbing the elements. Okula, Barbara, and Domingo looked at Navats in disbelief. At this moment, a wind howler beast jumped up and bit Navatsing's ankle. However, the wind howler beast's bite force couldn't even break Navats's skin at this moment. Navats quickly descended and crushed the wind beast that was biting his ankle with one foot. The ground was also crushed. Navats felt an indescribable power in her body. Navats took a step forward and punched the ground. Bang! With Navats as the center, the ground was like a wave, spreading out in all directions. In an instant, the ground within a radius of more than 30 meters was covered with spiderweb-like cracks. The few wind-howling beasts that were close to him were instantly affected by the shockwave and exploded. Okula Sinjith, Barbara Rush, and Dominguez were all stunned. What kind of power was this? It was too scary. Navats Singh looked at Okula, Barbara, and Domingo indifferently. Are you sure you still want to fight? Navats didn't even know how strong she was right now. But she was sure that she wasn't as strong as Qin Zhao. She seemed to have reached her limit in an instant when she absorbed the elements from the outside world. If Qin Zhao used this move, with his strong body, he would be more than 100 times stronger than himself. Navats Singh suddenly felt very lucky. Thank goodness Qin Zhao wasn't her enemy. Having an enemy like this was really a headache. No, it should be a very scary thing. And Nawats Hingis knew. This might just be one of Qin Zhao's abilities. When the Holy Infant Hurricane came, Navats and Delamore had seen Qin Zhao in that state. In the third night, which had never happened before in history, Qin Zhao fought from morning to midnight. As for the Holy Infant Hurricane, it was truly an evil spirit that resembled an army of thousands upon thousands. But without exception, Qin Zhao tore them all to pieces. It was also the first time they understood the difference between them. Navats didn't dare to say that she could compare to Qin Zhao with the power she displayed. But for Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo, it was already shocking enough. What kind of destructive power was this? If Navats really wanted to kill them, they wouldn't even have a chance to escape. Navats' attack was off the charts right now. Her defense was equally shocking. At the very least, Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo couldn't break his defense even if they worked together. Now, get out of my sight. Otherwise, I really won't be able to control myself and kill you. Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo's faces were ashen. They'd sworn to stop Navats, but in the end, they fled with their tails between their legs. They couldn't fight anymore. If they really did, they'd really die here. Chapter 1790. Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo ran away with their tails between their legs. Meanwhile, Navats didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to get out of her current state. After returning to Daly Moore's car, she sat in the seat with great difficulty. She was 23 meters tall, but the car was still a little small for her. Daly Moore stared at Navats with glowing eyes. Navats, you're too powerful. It's nothing to do with me. It's a completely copied ability from Chen. It's too scary. I have to learn weakness image and mirror magic as soon as possible. Daly Moore was suddenly filled with energy. Even if you learn mirror magic, you still shouldn't copy Chen's ability unless it's necessary. The consequences will be very serious. What's serious? That's the trouble with strengthening. Mirror magic can copy the opponent's ability, but after using the ability, it'll be a huge burden on the body. I remember last time I used weakness image and copied Chen's left arm. After the magic faded, my left arm was useless for 3 days. I couldn't lift it at all. I used so much power just now. I think I won't be able to get out of bed for a month. That's serious. That's the side effect of mirror magic. Otherwise, do you think this magic array is so perfect? But it's not bad to experience that. You know, you were like a god just now. No, you're still like a god now. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of the car without any warning. Oh no! Navats Singh and Delamore exclaimed at the same time. Daly Moore couldn't brake in time and the car crashed into the person. Bang! The expected scene of the person being sent flying did not happen. The front of the car seemed to have crashed into an electric pole. It instantly caved in. The airbag popped out from the steering wheel, and Daly Moore was confused. But Navats broke through the window in an instant and pounced towards that person. She hadn't dispelled mirror magic yet. She still had endless power. The person was pushed to the ground by Navats. He was also shocked. He didn't expect Navats to be able to push him to the ground. Who are you? Navats grabbed the man's neck with one hand. The man realized that he had overestimated his own strength and underestimated Navats Singh's. He had originally thought that he would be the one to grab Navats' neck. But now, the situation was reversed. How could this be? Why was this happening? The man's palms suddenly glowed with black light as he struck towards Navats' chest. But when his palms hit Navat Singh's chest, the magic attached to his palms dissipated. What was going on? Was Navat Singh that powerful? Who are you? Navat's increased the strength of her palm. The man's neck was being deformed by a tremendous force. Eastern unending Pillar King, lend me your strength, the man suddenly shouted. Navat's shingles could feel the man's power increasing, but it still didn't surpass him. She was more concerned about the magic this man was using. He was praying to the Eastern Endless Pillar King, one of the 5 gods of the Roma, and borrowing his power. In other words, he was the same as her, a Roma? To borrow the Pillar King's power, one first had to become a believer of the Pillar King. The legend of the 5 Pillar Kings was an internal belief of the Roma. It was an extremely small group. The others didn't have this belief. Just then, Navat Singh turned around. She saw Daly Moore's head bleeding in the car behind her. She seemed to be seriously injured. Navat's let go of the person in his hands. He was very strong. He was very powerful, but compared to her current state, he wasn't even worth mentioning. Navat's wasn't worried that he could hurt or defeat him. But just then, the man suddenly attacked. But he didn't attack Navat Singh directly. Instead, he reached out and grabbed Navat Singh's earlobe. Navat Singh instantly realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. The man forcefully tore the earlobe off. Ah! Navat Singh screamed in pain. Her ear was bleeding profusely. Navat Singh instantly felt her strength rapidly slipping away. Her earlobe was called Heal. It could extend the duration of all sustained spells by double. The mirror image spell could only be maintained for such a long time through the earlobe. Navat Singh felt weak. But before the power completely dissipated, Navat's punched the man's face with all his might. The man's face was punched by Navat Singh and he flew more than 10 meters away. Navat Singh fell to the ground in pain. She had no strength left to chase. The man stood up shakily. He looked at Navat Singh and then at the earlobe in his hand. He was hesitant. Should he kill Navat Singh now? After all, the threat that Navat gave him was too strong. But he wasn't in a good state either. His face was covered in blood. Blood seeped out of his mouth, nose, and ears. His head felt like it was splitting. It was extremely painful. At this moment, Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo suddenly appeared. Mr. Warren, are you okay? Okula looked at his sister on the ground with a complicated look in his eyes. Go kill her. The moment Warren said that, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Take Mr. Warren away from here, Okula Singh said. Barbara Rush and Dominguez looked at each other, knowing what Okula Hingis was up to. After all, they were sisters. It was reasonable that Okula couldn't bear to kill them. Moreover, in order to hold Warren back, Okula had been attacking her sister on her own initiative. She was worried that if Warren fought personally, it would endanger her sister's life. Mr. Warren, you're heavily injured. We'll take you away from here first, Barbara said. To be honest, they all knew how terrifying Warren's strength was. They thought that if Warren fought, Navat Singh would have no chance of winning. In the end, Warren actually won by a huge margin. He didn't even win by fighting head-on. The way he won was very clever. Chapter 1791. Hey, Stephen, do you have time to call me today? Chen Zhao had been wandering around for the past few days. He was very free. However, he knew how many places Stephen had gone to for the movie. Last time, Stephen had even gone to Chen Zhao's house and stayed for one night. Then, Rasva took him away. As far as Chen Zhao knew, Stephen had brought the main cast and crew to at least 5 countries for publicity in the past week. Daly Moore was in a car accident. She's still unconscious. Which hospital? Chen Zhao asked. Chantilly Hospital. I'll go over now. Chen Zhao hurried to the hospital. He saw Stephen's 2 bodyguards and his personal assistant, Yu Wenwei. The 3 of them were old acquaintances. So, when Chen Zhao arrived, they didn't stop him. They let him into the ward directly. How's her condition? Chen Zhao saw Stephen sitting before the bed. Daly Moore was lying on the bed with gauze wrapped around her head. Take a look first. Seeing Stephen's serious expression, Chen Zhao immediately put down his toolbox. After a quick check, he stood up and almost slapped Steven's face. Fuck, Daily Moore's just asleep. I just wanted you to see if she has any internal injuries, like a concussion or cerebral hemorrhage. Steven looked at Chen Zhao awkwardly. Then please make it clear. Chen Zhao looked at Steven with a dark expression. But the police said that there's something strange about the accident. What strange? It's like Daily Moore's car hit an electric pole, but there's no pole nearby, Steven said. Steven said, the friend who was with Dahlia was found outside the car. From the traces at the scene, it looks like she crashed through the windshield. You're talking about Nard Singer? Do you know her? She hangs out with Daily Moore and she's not a normal person. How is she now? Chen Zhao asked. Unconscious. The doctor said that she looks like she just finished a triathlon. Her body is almost half paralyzed. She's in this hospital too, right? Chen Zhao asked. Yes, I arranged a ward next door for her. I'll go next door. Is Daily Moore really alright? If you want anything to happen to her, I'll do it for you. Scram, hurry up and scram. When Chen Zhao went out, Halifa Oliver and Sannel happened to come in. Halifa and Chen Zhao nodded. Chen Zhao went to Navat Singer's room next door and saw a woman walk out. This woman was Okula Singh. Akula looked at Chen Zhao suspiciously. For you. Chen Zhao looked Okula up and down. For you. Just then For walked over from afar. Chin, do you have any patients in the hospital today? For had a headache over this bastard who always came to the hospital to steal patients. In fact, Chen Zhao's actions were already half public in the hospital. Apart from the new employees, the doctors who had worked in the hospital for more than half a year basically knew that Chen Zhao was an illegal doctor. However, whether it was the major shareholder of the academy or the dean, they all turned a blind eye to this. Most of the time, he didn't hide it anymore. Singer glanced at Chen Zhao. So he was a doctor. After thinking it through, Akula turned around and left. Chen, can't you control yourself? It seems like you guys can't do anything to the patients I've met. I don't think this will affect your performance. After chatting with For a bit, Chen Zhao entered Navat Singer's room. After inspecting Navat's body, Chen Zhao realized that there was nothing wrong with her. After thinking about it, he realized that she had used her non-elemental body. In other words, it was mighty spirit transformation. However, Chen Zhao had used mighty divinization before, so he knew very well how high the requirements were for physical fitness. It was like pouring pure oxygen into an oxygen cylinder. This was because of the metal walls of the oxygen cylinder. However, if compressed oxygen was poured into a balloon, the balloon would explode instantly. Nevertheless, Navats didn't use it too much. It seemed that she was rather restrained and didn't use it too much. The mighty spirit transformation did put a lot of pressure on her body. But it didn't hurt her foundation. Actually, Navats was like an athlete who had overdone her exercise. Her muscles were too tired, so she wasn't really injured. However, Chen Zhao also noticed the damage on Navat's left ear. Chen Zhao wasn't sure what had caused the damage. Chen Zhao sent a bit of celestial power to Navat Singh. It could save her half a month of rest. Knock, knock. At some point, Steven was standing at the door. Dahlia's awake. Oh, okay, I'll go. Is she okay? She's fine. Chen Zhao shook his head. Chen Zhao followed Steven back to Dahlia's room. Halifa Oliver and Sannel stood before Dahlia's bed. Dahlia was already awake and sitting on the bed. Chen, you're here. Sannel remembered that her mother and Chen Zhao had been at loggerheads before. Later, her grandfather had been the middleman and Chen Zhao had reconciled with her mother. However, she really didn't know that Chen Zhao and her mother had such a good relationship. Oliver, listen, you two go out first, Steven said. Chen, give Dahlia a checkup. Halifa was instantly unhappy. She looked at Steven coldly. Why don't you go out? You can be here, but I can't? I'll go out too, okay? Steven said angrily. After the three left, Chen Zhao sat on a nearby chair. Tell me what happened. I'm a bit confused about the details. Dahlia told him what had happened after lunch yesterday. First, Navat's sister had brought people to attack her. Then there was the car accident. As for the accident, Daily Moore remembered it clearly. However, after the airbag popped out, Dahlia was in a daze. Chen Zhao heard more clearly. The two groups of people who attacked Navots were probably from the same group. They were all after Navot's earring. Judging from this, the earring should be a magic item passed down by Navot's family. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1792. Chen Zhao looked at Delamore. After a long silence, he asked, "Do you need me to do something?" "Wait until Knots wakes up. I'll listen to her." On the day little Larissa was born, Delamore and Knots Singh came to help Chen Zhao. Whether they were effective or not, Chen Zhao would remember this favor. Daily Moore, on the other hand, was much calmer. She could tell that Knots Singh could get rid of her troublemaking sister many times. But she had never really done it. This meant that she still had feelings for her sister. So, Delamore didn't want to make the decision for her. After Knots Singh woke up, she would support her no matter what decision she made. In the end, Chen Zhao was an outsider. The favor was there, so he didn't mind being a knife for someone. After Chen Zhao left the ward, he said a few words to Stephen, Halifa Oliver, and Sanger. Halifa watched as Chen Zhao and Stephen exchanged glances. Even a blind person could tell that they had something on their minds. Chen Zhao and Stephen were birds of a feather, but Chen Zhao didn't have much of a relationship with her. Even if she asked, Chen Zhao probably wouldn't tell her. However, Halifa couldn't understand why she was clearly closer to Delamore than Stephen. What could Chen Zhao and Stephen know that Delamore couldn't let her know? Halifa's heart ached and she was furious. But she wouldn't show it. Plus, if she asked now, there was no guarantee that Stephen would mock him. "Stephen, I'll leave Delamore to you," Halifa said. "I have something to do at the company. I'll leave now." After that, Halifa left with Sanger. Stephen finally asked, "Chin, what did you and Delamore talk about? Did she get into some kind of trouble? You have to help her." Stephen's mind was filled with all sorts of movie plots, like how a secret organization wanted to kill Delamore. That was why filmmakers were so jumpy. Nothing big, just a few blind people. "Delamore doesn't want me to interfere, which means she can handle it," Chen Zhao said casually. He didn't say everything so that Stephen wouldn't worry too much. Really, stop nagging. If something really happened, would I just stand by and watch?" Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Let's go. Let's go take a look at the piece of land I recently acquired." Stephen was in a good mood. "Your daughter is still in the hospital. Are you sure you can come down peacefully? You've already checked that she's fine. What's there for me to worry about? Besides, if something really happens to Dahlia, I'll rob Mirror Lake. You owe me." "Is your daughter only worth a piece of land?" Yu Wenwei stayed behind to take care of Dahlia. The two bodyguards followed beside Stephen. Chen Zhao and Stephen sat in the back seat. "Old thing, I'm with you, but you still want 2 bodyguards to follow me. You don't trust me." The 2 bodyguards sitting in front were rolling their eyes. One of the 2 bodyguards was Femutis. She was one of the people who knew Chen Zhao's true colors. The other bodyguard came after Femutis. But he also knew that Chen Zhao and Stephen were so close that they were almost in the same boat. And Chen Zhao always liked to play such nasty jokes. "If I don't trust you, I'll tell them to kill you." Stephen glared at Chen Zhao. "By the way, Femutis, how's Evan?" "Not bad. He's gotten fatter." Femutis's income was stable now. He wasn't like before, when he could only feed Evan dog food. Stephen still paid Femutis a high salary. After 40 minutes of driving, they finally stopped. But it wasn't because they'd reached the ground. The road behind them was too hard to drive on. They could only get out and walk. The road behind them was a dirt road. Although it had been built, it hadn't been repaired for a long time. However, the environment here was indisputable. It was even better than the original Mirror Lake. They were at the top of the mountain. Looking into the distance, it was full of greenery. When the 4 reached the top, they were already drenched in sweat. However, a gemstone-like lake came into view. Chen Zhao gasped and turned to look at Stephen. Stephen was really awesome to be able to find a place like this. Not to mention the feng shui, the spiritual qi here was much more abundant than other places. "How is it?" "It's not bad, right?" Stephen asked, rather proud. Not bad, really not bad, Chen Zhao said sincerely. This place was really a blessed land. In ancient times, it would be a blessed land. To be able to find such a blessed land in modern society was truly a rare sight. How come no one owns such a good place? Chen Zhao asked, confused. Even a blind person could see that it was a good place. But why wasn't anyone occupying such a good place? Chen Zhao was really confused. There were many rich people in Ila. It couldn't be that everyone didn't want this place, right? Hearing Chen Zhao's words, Stephen suddenly had a toothache. Seeing Stephen's expression, Chen Zhao felt that there might be some flaws that he hadn't noticed. Mr. Stephen moved back. There's a crocodile. Another bodyguard immediately stood in front of Stephen. Chen Zhao saw it too. It was a 2-meter-long crocodile. There were crocodiles here? No wonder. But this place was about 100 meters above sea level. Chen Zhao didn't expect a crocodile to live here. Is this running water? Chen Zhao asked. Yes, it's an underground fountain. Stephen nodded. Everything here is good, but there are crocodiles. I found an expert to estimate that there are hundreds of crocodiles here. It's very troublesome. Since Stephen wanted to build a house here, it was obviously for living. But if there were crocodiles here, it would be a threat to the residents. It was impossible to clear hundreds of crocodiles. If 1 or 2 were missed, it would be a threat to Stephen and his family's safety. This was also why Stephen hadn't started building the land even though he'd bought it for so long. Didn't you know there were crocodiles here when you bought it? I did. Then why did you buy it? I still have you. That's too much. You're treating me like a labor, Chen Zhao complained. But this land wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. If there was a pond full of crocodiles, it meant that the fish here could support so many crocodiles. Just then, the crocodile that had been sunbathing by the shore suddenly crawled toward the fore. Oh, speaking of which, I haven't eaten crocodile meat yet. Let's eat crocodiles for lunch. Chapter 1793. Stephen and Famtis both knew what Chen Zhao was capable of. However, the other bodyguard, Frank, didn't know. He hadn't seen Chen Zhao fight anyone. When Chen Zhao casually walked up to the crocodile, Frank was shocked. He aimed his gun at the crocodile. But Chen Zhao only grabbed the 2-meter-long crocodile and lifted it up. It wasn't very big, but it was at least 100 kilograms. Chen Zhao actually lifted it up with one hand. Frank's jaw almost dropped. As for Stephen and Famtis, when they'd been chased by the demonized libel, they'd already seen Chen Zhao's power. Thus, a crocodile couldn't make them feel anything. Chen, this crocodile isn't enough for you, Stephen said. Skin it and roast it. There won't be much meat left. I'll go down and get a bigger one, Chen Zhao said. With that, Chen Zhao took off his clothes, leaving only his boxers, and jumped into the water. Frank's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Chen Zhao was asking to die. But Stephen and Famtis didn't care at all. After half a tank, Frank saw the water in front of him start to churn. Frank's heart tightened. Did Chen Zhao encounter crocodiles in the water? These were all crocodiles, real killer crocodiles. The largest could be 7 or 8 meters long and weigh close to 2 tons. They could dominate both freshwater and seawater. When they were hungry, they would even eat their own kind. In the animal world, they were definitely crazy. If humans encountered adult crocodiles in the water, they definitely couldn't win. Even on land, without firearms, they couldn't fight against these man-eating monsters. During World War II in the last century, there was a glorious story of a crocodile destroying a modern army of thousands. Putting aside the animals with infectious diseases, this was the most glorious war waged by wild animals against humans. There was no one else like it. In Frank's opinion, if Chen Zhao really encountered an adult crocodile in the water, he probably wouldn't be able to come up again. Whoosh! Suddenly, Chen Zhao stood up in the shallow water. Frank was shocked, but seeing that Chen Zhao was unharmed, he relaxed a little. Just then, Frank saw Sleep tossing and turning behind Chen Zhao. Upon closer inspection, he realized that Chen Zhao was holding a crocodile's upper jaw with one hand. Frank swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That crocodile was at least 6 meters long. This was definitely an overlord among the Gulf crocodiles. It was obvious that the crocodile was very powerful from the force it slapped the water with. But was it really okay for Qinzhao to just grab its upper jaw like that? The strange thing was that the saltwater crocodile couldn't close its jaws even though its lower jaw wasn't bound. Frank was shocked. He couldn't understand how Qinzhao had caught the crocodile with his bare hands. However, Qinzhao seemed to be very familiar with the place, while Famutus and Stephen seemed to be very relaxed. They probably already knew what Qinzhao was capable of. "Don't come over. Let's kill it first," Stephen shouted, jumping away immediately. He wasn't as capable as Qinzhao. If Qinzhao didn't hold on tight, the monster could send him to hell with a single bite. Qinzhao grabbed the crocodile's upper jaw and twisted it. With a crack, the saltwater crocodile's tibia was instantly broken. However, it wasn't completely dead. Its body was still wriggling. Stephen only calmed down after the crocodile's stomach was cut open. "I told you to get a big one, but your head is too big. We'll get rid of them sooner or later anyway. Isn't that what you want?" Qinzhao rolled his eyes. He and Frank were in charge of starting a fire. He couldn't catch crocodiles in the water, but he could still start a fire. Famutus was in charge of cutting open the crocodile's stomachs. Qinzhao and Stephen sat on a rock by the lake. With Qinzhao, Stephen wasn't afraid that a crocodile would suddenly jump out and swallow him. "Qin, do you really have a way to kill all the crocodiles here?" "It's not troublesome," Qinzhao said. "Abitos and Raymond can do it. Bring them here and they'll probably kill most of the crocodiles here in a dozen days." "Raymond? Oh, that big snake, right? I don't think I saw him last time. Why did you hide him?" "I didn't hide him. It's just that his body has grown a bit too much recently. I didn't want to scare you. Last time I saw Raymond, he was 5 or 6 meters long. You said he's grown a bit too much? How much can he grow?" Stephen remembered that the last time he saw Raymond, little Larissa wasn't even born yet. Raymond was long, but in his impression, Raymond had always been the skinny type. Compared to the python, he was at least half the size. "He's 12 meters now," Qinzhao said. Stephen sucked in a breath of cold air. 12 meters. He could probably break the world record. "I'm going to Moon Villa today. I want to see Raymond." Stephen was interested. "Your daughter is still in the hospital. Don't bring that up. Dahlia's fine." Soon, the aroma of meat wafted from the barbecue stall. Famutus and Frank didn't understand why Qinzhao would carry so many spices with him. Chili powder, cumin, salt and pepper. Qinzhao and Stephen started eating as soon as they arrived. Famutus and Frank didn't treat themselves as outsiders now. It was more fun to eat and drink together. Unfortunately, there was no alcohol. However, crocodile meat was really disgusting and had a fishy smell. Without alcohol, eating too much would be boring. Even Qinzhao couldn't eat much. Such a big crocodile was wasted just like that. As for the small one, he didn't even roast it. Instead, he tossed it into the water. In the end, he just buried the rest of the big one. "Stephen, what do you think about building your new home in the middle of the lake?" "Hey, that's a good idea. Why don't you build it in the middle of the lake?" "Mirror Lake is so much bigger than your lake. If we build it in the middle, it'll be too troublesome to go back and forth." They stayed at the top of the mountain for half a day. It wasn't until 3 in the afternoon that they went down. Stephen gave Yuwenaway a call and asked about Delamore's situation. After making sure that everything was fine, he followed Qinzhao to Moon Villa. Today, Portia stayed at Moon Villa to take care of little Jerlin and Larissa. Portia saw that Qinzhao had left her, Jerlin, and Larissa at home. Portia thought that she would have a chance to uncover the mystery of Moon Villa's chef. In the end, she waited in the kitchen until noon, but no one came to cook. She was very disappointed. In the end, she could only cook herself. When she saw Stephen, she immediately started fawning over him again. She wasn't even this friendly to Qinzhao, who paid her salary. Chapter 1794. Stephen was also shocked when he saw Raymond. Luckily, Raymond was still Raymond. Even though he had changed, he was still Raymond. After the initial shock, Stephen quickly calmed down. He observed Raymond with interest. This was not the first time Stephen had seen Raymond. Stephen had come into contact with Raymond when he was just a little snake. Stephen knew how intelligent Raymond was. Famtus and Frank, on the other hand, were frightened. They were afraid that the snake would swallow Stephen. What was a 12-meter snake? In this era, there were almost no snakes over 10 meters. It was not that there were none, but it was hard to find. Unless one ran to the deepest part of a tropical rainforest, they would not be found. Pythons and snakes were two different species. Raymond was a snake, not a python. But Raymond had the agility of a snake and the huge body of a python. The combination of the two was the scariest. If it was just a python in an open area, no matter how big it would not be a threat to a rational person. Because the python's mobility was too poor, the water was their main battlefield. Snakes were fast, but they were too small. A wooden stick could teach a snake how to sit. Raymond also had a characteristic that snakes and pythons did not have. He could chew. He ate by chewing like a mammal. So, he did not need to strangle his prey like a python, nor did he need to rely on poison like a poisonous snake. Raymond had all the advantages of snakes and pythons, and even abilities that they did not have. Not far. The people from the Holy Fire sect were not far. He would meet them in at most a day. Dylan thought to himself. The journey these few days was getting more and more difficult. This was not a tropical rainforest. But the journey was also difficult. It had been raining for days, not stopping for a moment. Norway was in northern Europe, so it was cold and humid all year round. This was where the equipment of the supernatural organization came into play. Even Dylan had to admit that they were well prepared. Waterproof clothing and tents played a great role in this environment. They could even find a way to get some cooked food. But Dylan looked down on them more and more. These guys did not seem to have any other skills besides bragging. Every time they went hunting, it was Klaus and the others. It seemed that in this team, the ones with the strongest combat power were the ordinary people like Klaus. Suddenly, a person appeared in front of the group, swaying in their direction. The team immediately stopped, and everyone raised their guard as they looked at that person. The man walked a few steps and suddenly sat on the ground. He stood up with difficulty, but he couldn't walk to the front of the team. After 2 or 3 steps, he fell to the ground. More Raz went up to check on the man. A moment later, he turned back and shook his head at everyone. Dead. Gaia turned the body over and found that half of the body had been hit by some kind of magic. It's necromancy, Helis said. At this time, Doring walked over and said, I remember that there is a canyon of death in this forest. However, it's not that big of a deal. There are often teams going in and out of the canyon of death. Why do you want to enter Death Canyon? What's the point of going to such a dangerous place? Death canyons could be found all over the world. Most of the time, because of the geographical environment, animals or humans would die in the valley, and the deathly aura would not be able to leave. Over time, death energy filled the air, and the dead could not rest in peace. In the end, they turned into undead and wandered around the valley, eventually forming the Canyon of Death. Doring had never been to the Canyon of Death, but he had heard of it. At least 20% of spiritualists in Norway had entered the Canyon of Death. There is a magic material called the Dying Flower growing in the Canyon of Death, Doring said. If we can find it, it can be sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Also, the Canyon of Death isn't dangerous, so many spiritualists go in and out. Although he had plotted against the supernatural organization, he didn't lie about this. He didn't need to lie. Anyway, the people from the Holy Fire sect would come soon. Helis looked at the man's injury and said, the necromancy spell that killed him is very powerful. Let's go and take a look. We haven't found any traces of the giant these days. They were doubtful about whether they could successfully find the giant. Logically speaking, the giant was as big as a hill. When it moved, it might not be earth-shattering, but it should at least leave some obvious traces. It shouldn't be completely untraceable. But the truth was that they couldn't find any traces of the giant at all. However, they had been in the forest for 6 or 7 days, and they hadn't fought at all. This made everyone a little angry. Other than the withered tree ghost territory they had encountered a few days ago, for people had moved around a little. The others were just here for sightseeing. But of course, they couldn't vent their bad moods. So after thinking, Wes said, "Let's go take a look at the Canyon of Death. If they could encounter some battles, it could ease everyone's agitated emotions." Gaia nodded. Doring looked down on these people even more. They only wanted to go to a place like the Canyon of Death that wasn't dangerous. He really didn't understand where these Americans got the courage to find the legendary giant. Even if they found it, could they really defeat the giant? Or did they have the courage to fight the giant? But he was kind enough to show them the way. After all, these Americans didn't lack money. If they had a good time in Death Canyon, he could also find a few dying flowers along the way. Doring directly used the guide spirit and found the direction of the Canyon of Death. Finding such a fixed location was very easy. It wasn't difficult at all. After walking for a while, they found another corpse. It had the same injury as the previous one. It seemed like the Canyon of Death wasn't far away. These should be spiritualists from Western Europe. This symbol seems to be a disciple of the Mountain Sect. The Mountain Sect was very famous in the United Kingdom. West recognized them mainly from the Mountain Sect insignia they wore. The Mountain Sect was a minority religion, but they acted more like an ordinary supernatural force. They didn't develop followers and believers. They just fought for territory all day and developed the businesses and companies under the Mountain Sect. The most unbelievable thing was that the Mountain Sect was a shareholding company. It was divided into major and minor shareholders. It had to be said that this religion, which was completely modeled after a listed company, was a brand new model. Of course, they weren't a cult, so they were developing quite well. It was said that they had many cooperation projects with the government. They had branches all over Europe. Chapter 1795. At the other end of the forest, a team was also passing through the forest toward the supernatural organization's team. Everyone in this team wore the same red and black clothes, but there was a red flame printed on the back. They were naturally from the Sacred Fire sect. There were more than 50 of them. They couldn't say that all of them were masters, but at least a dozen of them were quite famous in Northern Europe. Especially the person in charge of the division, Magri Modric. He was known as a tyrant in Northern Europe. Among the many people in charge of the division, his name was also very famous. Most of Magri Modric's subordinates were elites. To put it bluntly, most of them had some ability and were extremely daring. They used their own methods to do many evil things and were wanted by the government or the spiritual world. In the end, they could only hide in the Sacred Fire sect to avoid trouble. These people all had one thing in common. They ignored the rules of the world. In this regard, they were very much like Magneto from the X-Men. They thought they were better than others and didn't treat ordinary people as humans. Of course, in reality, neither the government nor the spiritual world would allow such people to be too active. The Norwegian Sacred Flame sect was considered one of the more powerful sects in Europe. Although the Nordic spiritual world was more active, the Norwegian government wasn't powerful. So, it gave the Sacred Fire sect a chance to develop. At this moment, a corpse appeared in front of them. "Guardian, look at this corpse." Lev, Magri Modric's second in command, shouted. As the head of the Norwegian branch, Magri Modric's position in the church was that of a protector. Magri took a few steps forward and looked at the corpse. Frowning, he said, "Necromancy." "Guardian, don't you think this corpse looks familiar?" "You know him?" Magri Modric asked. "No, I'm talking about the magic on this corpse." Magri Modric thought for a moment and suddenly remembered. He immediately exclaimed, "Isn't this the madman Ribbrick?" "Yes, this is Ribbrick's magic." Speaking of Ribbrick, Magri Modric felt a headache and helplessness. Ribbrick had once been a member of the Sacred Fire sect. In essence, he was no different from the other Sacred Fire sect members. If there was any difference between them, Ribbrick was even crazier. To be precise, he was a complete lunatic. The other members of the Sacred Flame sect knew when to put on airs. Although they had all killed and robbed before. However, he would not disregard the wine and start a massacre. But Ribbrick didn't care. The things he wanted, the women he wanted, he would just take them by force. Furthermore, his methods were extremely cruel, leaving no survivors. This also caused the entire Northern Europe region to be agitated. The government flew into a rage and issued a must-kill order to the spirit world. This was one of the few times in recent times that the government had issued an order to the supernatural world. Even the Sacred Flame sect could not withstand this pressure. In the end, they could only hand Ribbrick over to the alliance of several supernatural organizations. However, Ribbrick had relied on his powerful strength to do so. After killing dozens of spiritualists, he swaggered off. Over the next few years, news of Liblick's bloody massacres spread from time to time. However, Ribbrick no longer had anything to do with the Sacred Flame sect. Therefore, they did not care about what Ribbrick did. No one wanted to run into a lunatic like Ribbrick. Not even the Sacred Flame sect. This guy was a complete lunatic who did not know how to control himself. Furthermore, he also had a type of necromancy that he had created himself, which struck fear into the hearts of the entire spiritual world. This is Ribbrick's famous magic, dead cells? Lev asked. Just now, Magri Modric had only felt the aura of death on the corpse. Only now could he be completely sure that the magic left on the corpse was dead cells. I hope we don't run into that lunatic here, Magri Modric said. Even though there were more than 50 of them, Magri Modric was not confident that they could defeat Ribbrick. Even if they could win, it would probably be a Pyrrhic victory. Guardian, there are so many of us. Do we still need to fear Ribbrick? Since you know about the dead cells, do you know how terrifying this magic is? Magri Modric asked. It is said that this dead cells was created by the lunatic Ribbrick. If you come into contact with the dead cells, it will erode your magic. Once your magic is exhausted, you will die, Lev said. Actually, if it is just to guard against the dead cells, most of our team can do it. As long as there is a defensive magic, the dead cells cannot get close to you, Magri Modric said. Then what is so terrifying about this magic? Actually, the most terrifying thing is that Ribbrick can recycle the dead cells that have absorbed magic power and then turn them into his magic power source. In the past 20 years or so, he has killed hundreds of spiritualists. Almost every spiritualist died under the dead cells, and the magic power of every dead person became his magic power source. It's like he carries hundreds of magic power batteries with him. He has almost inexhaustible magic power. When Lev heard Magri Modric's words, his face instantly became extremely frightened. A terrifying enemy with nearly limitless magic power? How could they deal with such an enemy? Guardian, doesn't that mean he is invincible? Of course he's not invincible. There are still people in this world who can crush him. For example, the 23rd generation Blood Mary of the Scarlet Church. 12 years ago, the 23rd generation Blood Mary personally went out to kill Ribbrick. With the 23rd generation Blood Mary's help, do you think Ribbrick can escape? Of course he couldn't escape. The 23rd Blood Mary is a powerful being. She subdued Ribbrick in one move, but then she let Ribbrick go. Of course he couldn't escape. Why is that? Because Ribbrick and the 23rd generation Blood Mary were in the downtown area. Ribbrick threatened the 23rd generation Blood Mary that if she didn't let him go, he would self-destruct. If someone else self-destructed, the 23rd generation Blood Mary wouldn't care. But Ribbrick's self-destruction could cause heavy casualties in the downtown area, so the 23rd generation Blood Mary could only let him go. What about the 23rd generation Blood Mary? I don't know about the others. As far as I know, no one can fight Ribbrick head-on, Magri Modric said. That's why I don't want to meet Ribbrick. Even if we can win, I'm afraid we will suffer heavy casualties. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1796. Half a day passed. The people from the supernatural organization arrived at Death Canyon before the sky turned dark. Along the way, they found many corpses. Some had clearly been dead for a long time. Some only had piles of white bones left. Who knew how long they had been dead? Moreover, it could be seen that many of the corpses had died in the same way. This is Death Canyon, Dylan said. Let's go in before it gets dark. It'll be more troublesome at night than during the day. The undead are active at night. Just then, Heli spoke up and stopped everyone in their tracks. Don't go in, Helis said. There's a powerful guy inside. I'll go in. Dellen scoffed at Helis' words. Many people went in and out of Death Canyon. He hadn't heard of any powerful guy either. What was the point of this girl making such a fuss? However, judging from the others' expressions, they seemed to believe her. Helis, is the guy inside very powerful? Yes, very powerful, Helis said. You guys won't be able to handle him. Death magic is too strange. There are so many of us, so Gaia should be able to beat him. I'm 80% confident. Norma and him are 50-50, and so is Elite. The others probably can't beat him. He's that powerful? West asked in surprise. He didn't doubt Helis' guess. You're going to fight him alone? Yes. Since he's a necromancer, of course I have to fight him personally. Plus, he's quite famous among necromancers. Okay, West said. But you have to tell us if there's trouble. Send us a signal. Actually, he had the same personality as Qin Zhao. He was very protective. He didn't have any intention of fighting one-on-one either. In fact, in the spiritual world, one-on-one fights were never recommended. Most of the time, spells could restrain each other to a certain extent. Unless they were powerful to a certain extent, it was obvious that they would be restrained in a small area. Therefore, one-on-one fights didn't mean who was stronger. Gaia went up and patted Helis' shoulder. Don't make me go in and clean up the mess. Actually, everyone knew that Helis was a very competitive person. Their slogan in the association every day was to become someone who could fight alongside Qin Zhao. Even if this slogan seemed unrealistic, because they all knew how powerful Qin Zhao was. But Helios was never discouraged by this. Once Gaia said that, Helith would definitely not send out a distress signal. But at the same time, she would also face this battle with absolute caution. He would not underestimate his opponent just because he was 80% confident. Yes, I know. Harrell was also clear-minded and naturally knew that Gaia was trying to goad her. After that, he walked into the Death Valley alone. His figure gradually disappeared in the hazy rain. We'll rest here for the night, West said. Dellen was sick and tired of this. These Americans. He really didn't understand what they were doing here. A mere Death Canyon was enough to make them feel as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Now, he had to spend the night in this completely uncovered place. Once they left the tent, they were all wet. Thinking of this, Dellen felt irritated. However, his words carried little weight in the team. No one would listen to him. After setting up the tent, Derlin went inside. He didn't greet the others either. He took out his phone and sent a message. Where are you? But he was very careful. After sending the message, he deleted it. Very soon, the other side replied. After receiving the message, Derlin was extremely happy. Because the Sacred Fire sect wasn't far from them. That Derlin has been secretly sending messages a few times recently, Klaus said to Gaia. Morid planted a true vision seed in him. He already knows everything about him. A group of people is approaching us, Gaia said. Gaia said, our people have been feeling down for the past few days. We need a big battle to lift everyone's spirits. Actually, a few people in the team already knew about this. West definitely knew, but he only wanted to let a few people know. They treated it as an accidental attack. This way, they could better lift everyone's spirits. Of course, the prerequisite was that no one was hurt. Derlin thought that he was being careful and cautious, but how could he hide it from some people? Just then, there was another loud rumble in the sky. This was the second thunder near the withered tree demon's territory a few days ago. Then, a huge body appeared. And this body was right above their heads. Gaia and Klaus were outside the tent and naturally saw this huge body. It was the feet of the giant, and the giant was stepping towards their camp. Oh no! Gaia and Klaus both exclaimed. But the giant's foot did not land. It was like it was stepping through the air, leaving no footprints on the ground. As the thunder disappeared, the giant's figure also disappeared. That's not a giant, more like some kind of image, Gaia said doubtfully. If that's the case, then does the giant we've been searching for really exist? Klaus was also a little hesitant. The Scarlet Mission stated that the giant wreaked havoc in the forest, So it attracted the attention of the Scarlet Church. That means the giant exists. But if it's such a huge giant, the destruction it would cause would be huge. It might even destroy a small city. Even if it's not near a densely populated area, it would at least cause great damage. It's not as simple as attacking a few humans, Gaia said. You mean the giant we saw isn't the one attacking humans? I don't think so. If it was in a densely populated area, it wouldn't be able to hide it. If it was in the wilderness, I'm afraid there wouldn't be anyone left alive. If the giant stepped over, I'm afraid everyone would die. So either the quest itself is a lie, or the giant we saw wasn't the real giant. Just then, Morid came out of the tent and walked towards Gaia. Gaia, someone stepped on the seeds I left on the road. Someone is approaching us. How many are there? Gaia asked. About 40 to 50 people. I can't calculate the exact number, Morid said. The seeds he left were like a sensor device that could roughly determine the distance and number of people. But it couldn't be absolutely accurate. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1797. Pa. A crisp sound came from under Modrich's feet. Modric stopped and bent down to pick up a seed on the ground. Is this a long-distance message? Modric recognized the seed. Looks like we've been discovered. It's okay, just a bunch of unruly people, Modric said nonchalantly. Sometimes, power could decide everything. If it was in a society, he might be able to turn the situation around with his wits and wits. But this was a forest. All wits and wits would be crushed by absolute power. Magri Modric had enough confidence in the Sacred Flame sect. This group of people was 80% of the Sacred Flame Order's Norwegian branch's combat power. He had brought almost all of the Norwegian division's combat power. Those who didn't come only made up 20% of the combat power. Most of them were peripheral members or even ordinary people. Mainly, he wanted to try and see if he could find the legendary giants. If they accidentally completed the Scarlet Mission, then even if they were members of the Sacred Flame sect, they could still go to the Scarlet Church to receive the reward. Magri Modric still had some ideas and ambitions. Of course, the first task was to get rid of the Americans. It was said that the Americans were quite rich. They could pay $200,000 for a guide. That was to say, if he could take them all down, then millions or even tens of millions of dollars would not be a problem. For an organization like the Sacred Flame sect that had been attacked and suppressed by the government and others, money had always been a problem that they had to worry about. Of course, extortion and blackmail were not impossible. The key problem was the trouble that would follow. Once the bottom line was crossed, then they would be the enemy of the world. For example, Riblik. He was in a situation where he was the enemy of the world. The Sacred Flame sect was arrogant, but not crazy. Kidnapping ordinary people was meaningless. Kidnapping rich people would have a huge impact. Once the government found out, then the government would retaliate with unparalleled ferocity. Although individuals in the spiritual world were stronger than ordinary people. But the government was still the government. In this era, the power of the government was above everything. So for the Sacred Flame sect, the Americans were the god of fortune who gave them money. Most importantly, there would be no follow-up trouble. So what if there was follow-up trouble? Could the power or organization behind them take revenge on the Sacred Flame sect? Not long after, the Sacred Flame sect's team appeared at the periphery of Death Canyon. In the heavy rain, they could see a few figures in front of them. Why weren't they prepared? Didn't you say there were more than 30 people? Could it be an ambush nearby? Lev asked. Ambush? Magri Modric sneered. This was not a real battlefield. In such a complicated environment, and with the limited number of people, it was impossible for them to survive. The so-called ambush was meaningless. Lev, teach them a lesson, Magri Modric said. Lev took 2 steps forward, not caring if he was exposed to the Americans. Raising his arms high, Enong chanted an incantation. At this moment, the raindrops in the sky suddenly turned into sharp icicles. Wah wah wah. Suddenly, tens of thousands of icicles fell from the sky. Then, the few people outside the tent covered their heads and scurried away. Then, the campsite instantly exploded. One by one, they came out of their tents with their heads bleeding. Wow, what's going on? What happened? The icicles were not fatal, but if they hit the head, they would definitely pierce through the skin. Dylan ran out too. When he saw the sacred flame sect, he could not help but be happy. When he looked at the battered and exhausted Americans, he felt even more carefree. A few days ago, they had been showing off in front of him. Now it was time to see how they would die. Gaia, Morid, West, Klaus, and the others did not warn him immediately. They covered their heads and hid. Gaia, what happened? Who attacked us? Did those bastards attack us? Bastards, I'm going to kill them. Jalinash had a fiery temper. She had been holding it in for a few days and had nowhere to vent. Now, she was being attacked for no reason. Of all things, the icicle had scratched her cheek. For a woman, appearance was as important as life. Especially a woman with a bad temper. For a moment, the campsite was in chaos. All of them were cursing the attackers. By then, the people from the Sacred Flame sect had spread out and surrounded the people from the supernatural organization. You've been surrounded. Surrender now. Otherwise, we won't go easy on you. Magri Modrich shouted proudly. Suddenly, a fireball appeared above the campsite. It was a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 1 meter. Go to hell. Jalinash threw a super explosive bomb in Magri Modrich's direction. There was a hint of surprise in Magri Modrich's eyes. What a powerful elementalist. Magri Modrich himself was an elemental sorcerer and specialized in fire magic. Dylan was shocked too. Jalinash was actually so powerful. He was actually able to release such a powerful fire-type magic. Magri Modric also raised one hand and a super explosive bomb appeared above his head. Boom! The two super explosive bombs collided with each other, causing an earth-shattering explosion. Magri Modric looked at Jalinash, who had released the super explosive bomb. Then he looked at Jalinash's heaving chest. His lips curled. It seemed that releasing such a super explosive bomb was too strenuous for this girl. Jalinash's chest was indeed heaving, but it wasn't because she was tired. It was because of anger. Seems like you won't give up until you see the coffin. Magri Modric's gaze was indifferent. He raised his right hand again. An even bigger fireball with even more terrifying power formed. This wasn't an explosive bomb anymore. It was called a small sun. The rain couldn't get close to the small sun. The entire entrance to Death Valley was completely illuminated by the small sun. Now, tell me, do you surrender? Dylan immediately shouted, Magri Modric, it's me. I'm Dylan. He didn't want to be affected by these Americans. So, he immediately revealed his identity and joined the Sacred Flame sect's side. Then he could enjoy the rights of a victor. Jalinash wasn't shocked when she saw Magri Modric's magic. She was only happy. I like this magic. I want it, Jalinash said like a bandit. Chapter 1798. Klaus, Nami. Come behind me, Risa said. Risa didn't need to worry about the others, but the lightning squad couldn't resist this large-scale magic. Klaus and the others were ordinary people. They couldn't resist this kind of attack. The power of the little sun in front of them was probably equivalent to a tomahawk missile. Mr. Magri Modric, I think they seem to be looking down on you, Doring said. Doring said, when they looked at you, they did not show any respect or fear. You are a tyrant. Magri Modric glanced at Doring, and then at the Americans. It seemed like, as Doring said, they were not afraid. Magri Modric didn't like this kind of enemy. He liked to see his enemies terrified and at a loss. Magri Modric's right arm, which was raised in the air, moved forward. The little sun shot towards the center of the camp. Boom! The huge flames seemed to be able to destroy everything. But the fire and impact seemed to be extinguished faster than expected. Maybe it was because of the rain. But Magri Modric believed that the power of the little sun was enough to kill half of them. The other half would also lose the power to resist. But when the fire gradually disappeared, the group of Americans still stood in the same place. They didn't seem to be hurt. The figures in the camp were messy. Tall, short, men, women, all stood there unevenly. But in this chaos, there was an indescribable uniformity. Risa's petite body seemed to be panting, and her face was a bit irritable. She had absorbed too much heat. She needed to find a place to pour it out. Or a person. Just then, a big hand rested on Risa's shoulder. "Risa, do you need to share some?" Gaia asked. "No, I like this kind of full load. I can still hold more," Risa said calmly. Magri Modric was a bit surprised. Why didn't they die? There wasn't even anyone injured. Could it be that one of them had some kind of magic that could restrain his little son? Jalanash walked out of the camp alone and walked towards Magri Modric. "Sir, I think we can talk," Jalanash said, staring at Magri Modric. "Have you chosen to surrender?" Magri Modric was still arrogant as he looked down at Jalanash. "No, give me this spell and I'll let you live, okay?" Jalanash looked at Modric sincerely. "Ah, little girl, do you know my name? I'm from the Holy Flame sect. I'm a tyrant." Magri Modric said, "Do you know what I'm best at? Or do you think that by blocking one of my attacks, you will have the ability to fight against me?" "Tyrant." Touching her chin, Jalanash turned to West. "Mr. West, will the chairman agree if I call myself tyrant? If you're called tyrant, then I'll be called queen." Lisa immediately joined the discussion. "You can only call me princess," Moore said. "No, I don't want to share a name with a bear," Risa said. Magri Modric's face darkened. These Yanks didn't seem to care about him at all. They didn't even care about the Holy Flame sect. This wasn't good. "Damn Yanks, you'll pay for your ignorance," Magri Modric yelled. No one liked to be looked down upon or even ignored. Plus, Magri Modric was a very hot-tempered person. Jalanash looked at Magri Modric. "Seems like you don't agree. But it doesn't matter. I'll make you speak anyway." Saying this, Jalanash pointed at Magri Modric and made a shooting motion. Bayu, a red light shot out from Jalanash's finger. Magri Modric immediately cast a magic shield on himself, but the red light instantly shattered the shield and pierced through Magri Modric's shoulder. Everyone was shocked. Magri Modric was injured? He was actually injured? Death Ray? Magri Modric was also proficient in fire magic. Of course, he knew this was Death Ray. It had extremely powerful penetrating power. Dellen's expression changed slightly. It seemed like these Yanks were stronger than he'd imagined. At least Jalanash's strength surprised Dellen. After all, the person beside him was the tyrant Magri Modric. Not everyone could hurt him. Smiling, Jalanash looked at Magri Modric. Magri Modric was even more furious. Attack at will. Instantly, more than 50 Holy Flame sect disciples attacked the members of the supernatural organization. Just then, vines suddenly drilled out of the ground. These vines came very suddenly and instantly grabbed 7 or 8 Holy Flame sect disciples. The few disciples screamed in agony. The vines wrapped tighter and tighter around them, almost crushing their bones. Morid looked at West. "Mr. West, can I kill them?" "Of course, as you wish." West stood where he was and nodded slightly. Dellen was even more shocked. This young man called Morid was actually such a powerful nature plant spiritualist. At the same time, Lisa also attacked. She started to absorb heat and poured it on the Holy Flame sect disciples. Lisa slapped more than 10 times in the air, each with a powerful and high-temperature impact. The disciples who couldn't cast a magic shield in time were instantly torn to pieces. Even if they had a magic shield, it didn't mean they could withstand the impact. They just didn't end up as pitifully as their companions. On the other hand, Gakira and Dongye Tianxi loved this kind of chaotic battle the most. Most importantly, they could kill people. Dongye Tianxi, in particular, turned into a samurai the moment he unsheathed his katana. The weapon he was holding was Demon Blade White-Faced Ghost. When the blade was unsheathed, demonic aura filled the air. Dongye Tianxi turned into a wild and cruel monster. There was only slash in his mind. One slash at a time. Beside him, Gen Kira reminded him. "White-faced ghost, behave yourself. Otherwise, our boss will throw you into the lava." Instantly, Dongye Tianxi sobered up. White-faced ghost really wanted to kill Genkira too, but he didn't want to face Qin Zhao's anger. His current state didn't give him absolute freedom, but it was at least acceptable. Damn, these people are hard to deal with. Retreat, retreat. Magri Modric yelled. Suddenly, from the direction of Death Valley, a cloud darker than the night shrouded the area. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1799. Helis strolled out. But she was still holding a head in her hand. Seeing Helis come out of the Death Valley, everyone made way for her. Helis, in principle, we don't object to you killing people, Wes said. But we can't tolerate the birth of a pervert. Throw this head away and we'll still be on the same side. I'm not a pervert. Helis threw the head on the ground helplessly. I just want what's in his head. Fine. Next time you carry a head, can you find something to carry it with? I don't have anything to carry, Helis said. My clothes are expensive. I don't want to use them to carry this disgusting head. Go find something to carry it with you. Oh, how long will it take to extract the thing from this head? Can you do it in Norway? Or do you need to bring it back? It'll take a long time. Fine. Looks like I need to find a way to send this head back home. Helis looked at the scene. Did I miss something? Magri Modric saw the head. He recognized Riblik. Back then, he was the one who had tried his best to pull Riblik into the Holy Flame sect. Of course, in the end he had personally handed Riblik over to the organization. So, he remembered it clearly even though many years had passed. That crazy, perverted, terrifying madman filled with evil. He was an undefeatable madman. Modric remembered it very, very clearly. Riblik. But today they had reunited, and in such a way. Riblik only had a head left. The face of the head was also filled with shock and astonishment. How could this be? Who was that black-clothed girl? How could she have killed Malik? How could a girl kill that terrifying madman? Helis, don't fight with me, Jalanash said. I want the man called Tyrant alive. West, get ready too. We need to send him back to the headquarters too. Which one is Tyrant? Helis asked curiously. Which one? Isn't he powerful? He has to be at least 1/10 as powerful as the president to have that name. That's him. Jalanash pointed at Magri Modric. But this nickname belongs to me now. He has a spell that I like. Magri Modric suddenly felt a chill. He met Hallie's gaze. He noticed that Hallie's was a little interested in him. After all, this girl had just killed Ribrik. Modric didn't think he could compete with Ribrik. He also didn't think that he could fight against the person who killed Ribrik. This was a true level suppression. All right, I won't do it. Harrel shrugged. In fact, her magic power had not yet recovered. She had used the abyssal demon in the battle with Ribrik. It couldn't be said that he didn't have any fighting strength now. However, he was definitely not at his peak condition. The battle in the Death Canyon just now had satisfied her. Therefore, for the time being, she did not want to make a move. Moreover, these enemies were too weak compared to Ribrik. A few of their main forces did not make a move. 2/3 of the work had been done. Now, only 1/3 of the people were left. No one in the Sacred Flame sect, including Magri Modric, had expected this. These Americans were so strong. Run! Someone shouted. However, they could not escape from the man-eating beast. White-faced ghosts like this kind of chasing fish and slashing game the most. Except for Gatella, who needed to supervise White-faced Ghost, everyone else stayed where they were. Jalanash looked at Magri Modric with a smile on her face. See, give me that spell and I'll let you go. Magri Modric's face was pale. But Dellen's face was even paler, because he suddenly realized the mistake he had made. He had underestimated these Americans. These Americans had not really made a move along the way. But this did not mean they were not strong. Most importantly, he was a traitor. Traitors were more hated than enemies. For example, in Germany after World War II, ordinary soldiers would not be court-martialed, because they were just manipulated pawns. Only those generals and leaders were court-martialed. And those traitors. Magri Modric's eyes flashed. He was looking for a chance to break out. The only thing he was glad about was that he was a fire elemental. He had not risked his life alone and had not gone deep into the enemy's line of defense. He had been standing on the periphery. So he was considering if he should turn and run now. Would he have the chance? Do you want to run? Jalinash was too experienced in battle. Looking at Magri Modrich's eyes, Jalinash guessed his intentions. Magri Modric was secretly furious. Damn this little girl. Why was her intuition so sharp? Guardian, let's surrender. Lev was already desperate. Was this still the spiritualist from the Magic Desert? This was like a national football team suddenly running to the Champions League and then abusing a powerhouse team. Not winning but losing 10 o'clock. This result was so absurd, so unacceptable. There are too few people, not enough to go around, Mord complained. In fact, he could handle most of the enemies alone. Magri Modric gritted his teeth and shouted, I demand a fair duel with you. If I win, I demand the corresponding rights. Everyone looked at Magri Modric. It was unknown whether they were surprised by Magri Modric's choice, or surprised by his courage. In fact, Magri Modric was just putting his all on the line. He didn't think he could escape. He wasn't good at speed. If he wanted to rely on his own 2 feet to escape the forest and the strong people in front of him, that was completely impossible. That was why he came up with such a strange request. What if you lose? Jalinash asked. Then I accept being your captive. Fuck, you're a captive now, Jalinash scolded. She wasn't a lady. If she was a lady, she wouldn't have wanted to get the nickname Tyrant just because she thought it was imposing. If you lose, then hand over your magic, Jalinash said. How about that? Nothing much. Magri Modric knew very well that magic was his life-saving card. If he handed it over, he would completely become a lamb on the chopping board. Chapter 1800. Jalinash, Harris said. Kill him without him saying anything. Just leave his head intact. Modric was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. How could he forget about this woman? Since she could get the memory she wanted from Ribric's head, she could definitely get the same memory from his head too. That's right. Jalinash remembered. She looked at Modric with an even more unfriendly gaze. If that's the case, there's no need for this duel. Just kill him. I agree. If I lose, I'll give you the spell you want. What a joke. This was his last trump card, not a talisman to kill him. If his trump card became a talisman to kill him, what was the point? Even if he didn't want to use the spell. It wasn't as precious as his own life. All right, I'll reluctantly agree, Jalinash said. They can't interfere during our duel. Otherwise, you'll lose and you'll have to let me go. Okay? Wes didn't care. He knew what Modric was thinking like the back of his hand. In this duel, Magri Modric had the advantage from the start. Because Jalinash wouldn't kill him, she had to keep him alive to give the spell. But he could be heavy-handed. It would be best if he could force the others to attack. That way, he would win even if he didn't win. Then, the other party would have to keep their promise and let him go. Jalinash understood this too, but she didn't care either. Just like what Magri Modric himself believed in. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and plots were laughable and foolish farces. The old members of the supernatural organization had completely different thoughts in the past and present. Back then, Jalinash was still the #1 fighter in the organization. Back then, she didn't need to think about who she could defeat. She only needed to think about one thing. That was to make it impossible for the other people in the organization to surpass her. Before Qinzhao came, she'd maintained it very well. After Qinzhao came, she and the other people in the organization finally understood something. They didn't need to defeat 1 or 2 people, but a group of people. The Tower of Trials gave them this opportunity. When each of them entered the Tower of Trials alone, they could not even last for a moment. Up until now, each and every one of them had relied on their own strength to pass through the first level, and someone had also passed through the second level. What they were best at was not one-on-one, but one-on-many. When a person could easily deal with multiple opponents at once, it would be extremely easy to deal with one-on-one. Moreover, when facing enemies, everyone instinctively used the number of monsters on the trial tower to calculate the enemy's strength. As for Magri Modric's strength, everyone already had an idea in their hearts. He wasn't weak. With Magri Modric's strength, as long as he was given a few chances, he would probably be able to pass the first level. According to the strength of the monsters on the second floor, it should be equivalent to the strength of 30 monsters. Everyone had a different evaluation in their hearts, but everyone's evaluation of Magri Modric wasn't too far off from each other. Jalanash had just passed level 2 not long ago and was now struggling on level 3. The crowd made way for Magri Modric and Jalanash. Doring and Lev wanted to run. However, Gaia placed her large hand on their shoulders. "Where are you going? There's going to be a big show here." With bitter expressions, the two were pulled to the edge of the arena by Gaia. Magri Modric glanced at the Americans around him. Then his gaze fell on Jalanash. "Are you ready? Can we start now?" Magri Modric asked. "Any time," Jalanash replied. "Then let's start," West ordered. Magri Modric immediately wanted to throw out Little Sun again. However, just then, Jalanash's 10 fingers shot out 10 red rays at the same time. Magri Modric was dumbfounded. Fight my ass, how could he fight like this? Jalanash's death ray had pierced through Magri Modric's shoulder, but it didn't cause much damage to him. However, it didn't cause too much damage to him. It wasn't even a serious injury, let alone a fatal one. Of course, this was because Jalanash didn't plan on killing him. If Jalanash really wanted to kill him, she could just shoot at another position. He would either be seriously injured or crippled. How could he fight one-on-one? So, Magri Modric purposely cast 2 fire shields on himself. With the power of the death ray he had just experienced, he felt that 2 fire shields should be able to block Jalanash's killer death ray. However, Magri Modric didn't expect that. Jalanash's killer weapon wasn't the death ray, but the 10-finger volley. Magri Modric's 2 fire shields could block 1 death ray. But he wasn't naive enough to think that he could block Jalanash's volley at the same time. Jalanash's 10 fingers could probably turn him into a hornet's nest with just a sweep. "I admit defeat." Magri Modric was very decisive. Without any hesitation. If he could fight and had a chance, Magri Modric definitely wouldn't admit defeat so easily. But it was precisely because he didn't have a chance that he didn't want to lose both in person and spirit. Being able to shoot the death ray with 10 fingers at the same time. This was enough to show how strong Jalanash's magic was. In addition, it was extremely fast and had great destructive power. So Magri Modric didn't think he had a chance to fight back. If Jalanash wanted to kill him, he wouldn't even have a chance to fight back. Maybe the difference in power between them wasn't that big. But the magic they had decided the outcome of this duel. Magri Modric also had instantaneous magic. But it wasn't powerful enough to hurt Jalanash. And Jalanash's death ray wasn't just fast, it also had shocking penetrative power. He believed that Jalanash wouldn't really kill him. But if they really fought and Jalanash missed and hit a vital spot, it would be very fatal. Rather than admit defeat after being trampled on, it was better to save his last bit of face. "The magic is in my phone. I'll send it to you." Magri Modric was very trustworthy. To put it bluntly, he just hoped that Jalanash would leave him a way out for this reason. "Okay, leave the thing and you can go." Jalanash didn't want to make things difficult for him. After all, they didn't have a deep hatred, and she got what she needed. But this guy has to stay. Jalanash pointed at Delin. Chapter 1801. Delin was so scared that he peed his pants. Sure enough, they were going to settle the score. Delin raised his head and looked at Gaia, who had her hand on his shoulder. His legs had already turned to jelly. Of course, Modric wouldn't care about Delin. He wasn't one of his people. And from their tone, they didn't seem to have any intention of making things difficult for Leviticus. He had no obligation to stand up for Delin. Plus, he hated Delin, who dragged him into the pit. Were these Americans really weaklings? Why the fuck did you find a bunch of weaklings like this in Europe? Forget about extortion, he had to save his life first. There was no need to talk about revenge or anything like that. He'd brought 80% of the Holy Fire sect's combat power from the Norway branch. And they'd all died here. How could he talk about revenge now? He didn't have the ability to. Can you tell me who you are? Do you want revenge? West smiled at Magri Modric. Modric shook his head and said calmly, I don't dare, but I want to get to know you. North America, Supernatural Organization. I hope we'll have a chance to work together in the future, Modric said indifferently. Modric wasn't saying it out of anger. He really had this thought. Of course, it was more likely that they wouldn't have any contact. There were so many organizations in the world. The Holy Fire sect was only popular in Europe. Unless the supernatural organization's tentacles extended to Europe and they had a huge conflict. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any contact with each other. Modric had never thought of sending people to North America to seek revenge from the supernatural organization. What a joke. The supernatural organization had already shown such great power. If he wanted revenge, what price would he have to pay? And if he couldn't take revenge and angered them, then the supernatural organization might come to him. Modric couldn't say that he didn't hate them, but he was more concerned about whether it was worth it or not, and whether it was possible. The answer was obvious. While there was hatred between them, Modric didn't want to make enemies. You're so powerful. Why haven't I heard of you in North America? Modric could clearly feel that there were still a few people in their team who hadn't made a move yet. Those people were the strongest in their team. When we feel the need, our names will be heard all over the world, West said confidently. Then, will you participate in the Battle of Holy Glory? What Battle of Holy Glory? West was stunned. Everyone else, including Dylan and Lev, revealed looks of astonishment. You don't know? That's impossible. You guys are definitely qualified. We really don't know. Can you tell us about the Battle of Holy Glory? This year's Battle of the Holy Glory will be held in Istanbul. Istanbul used to be known by several names, such as Constantinople. It was once the capital of New Rome and later the capital of the Ottoman Empire. Of course, Istanbul was well documented in history textbooks. There were even more that were not recorded in history textbooks. For example, his status in the spiritual world. The Battle of the Holy Glorious Ones is actually a martial arts competition jointly organized by the 3 religions and 9 nations to select the Holy Glorious Ones for the next 10 years. 3 religions and 9 nations? Taoism, Buddhism, JD religion. The 9 nations are Japan, Russia, Norway, England, Austria, Vatican City, Turkey, India, and Egypt. There are 10 Holy Glorious Ones each year. The 3 religions and 9 nations will give out spots to individuals or organizations. Then they'll fight. The 10 winners will receive the glory of the Holy Glorious Ones. Magri Modric looked at everyone. This Battle of the Holy Glorious Ones can be said to be a secret. In fact, many organizations and individual spiritualists know about this event. Of course, it's called a secret because the majority of those who know about the Battle of the Holy Glorious Ones are the top organizations and forces, or the top lone wolves. Moreover, almost every time, only those organizations and individuals participate. Those organizations and individuals below the top have no way of knowing about this. Modric had thought that the supernatural organization would know about this. After all, they were so powerful. There was no reason they wouldn't know. But now, it seemed that they were a newly rising organization. It was normal that they didn't know. Plus, the 3 religions and 9 nations hadn't started giving out spots yet. Are there any benefits to getting the Holy Glorious Ones? Glory. Isn't that enough? The supernatural organization will become famous in the spiritual world because of this, Modric said. Glory? That's all? West lost interest at once. Hey Chenjiao, Zhang Tianyi said. There's an event in Istanbul next January. Does your supernatural organization want to participate? What event? Do I get paid? Chen Zhao was lying in the sun. The Spiritual Worlds event is actually a martial arts competition. Are you sure you want me to participate? I'm not asking you to participate. It's your supernatural organization. I remember that you have many strong subordinates. Zhang Tianyi didn't want someone who broke the balance to participate in that event. If Chen Zhao participated, it would only become a farce. They're all busy, Chen Zhao said. I'm busy too. Why don't you go and play? I'll pay for the flight and accommodation. Do I need your money? Chen Zhao said straightforwardly. Can't you give me some face? This is also a chance for the supernatural organization to become famous. I don't need it. The supernatural organization doesn't need it either. Chen Zhao was telling the truth. The supernatural organization wasn't famous now, but even so, they were still taken care of by the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. If he made a name for himself, then trouble would come one after another. If they were celebrities, the more famous, the better. Fame meant money. But in the spiritual world, fame often meant all kinds of trouble. For example, was Zhang Tianyi famous enough in the spiritual world? Right now, he was basically the top person in the world, the Tao Master, the uncrowned king, and so on. But when some countries or regions encountered trouble, they would think of him first. For example, why didn't the Japanese look for him for the Rock of Death incident? Why did they look for Zhang Tianyi instead? Was he weaker than Zhang Tianyi? Of course, it was because Zhang Tianyi was famous while he was unknown. Chen Zhao didn't think that it would be good to stand out. Making a fortune in silence was Chen Zhao's principle of life. Chapter 1802. Are you really not going to consider it? That activity is pretty interesting. Do you have any tickets? Leave 2 for me. If it's for participation, then forget it. Fuck off. I don't have any tickets. Just be a circus. Fine. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. I'm done. Hanging up, Chen Zhao raised his voice. Portia, get me a few cans of beer. Portia's face darkened. She walked up to Chen Zhao. Boss, I'm not your maid. Oh, you've already worked for me for a month. I haven't given you your salary yet, right? Portia felt that Chen Zhao was too much of a bully. Gritting her teeth, she stared at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao glanced at Portia. Do you have any objections? No. Do you have any other orders, boss? That's good. Go on, you're blocking my sunlight. Chen Zhao waved his hand. Portia really wanted to tear Chen Zhao into pieces. Just then, the butler said, Master, Ms. Demon is calling you. Give me my phone. Portia obediently handed the phone to Chen Zhao. Boss, when are you going to give me my salary? Go away. Don't disturb me. After chasing Portia away, Chen Zhao called Demon's number back. Demon, what's up? Nawat Singh received news that her tribe seems to have been attacked. She's trying to get out of the hospital at all costs. Can you help protect her? Sure, Chen Zhao agreed decisively. I'm going to the hospital. Wait for me. After hanging up, Chen Zhao said to Portia, Portia, I'm going out for a while. Help me take care of Jerlin and Larissa. My salary, however, Chen Zhao didn't listen to Portia at all. He had already left. Chen Zhao rushed to the hospital. Demon was already helping Nawat Singh get out of the hospital. Nawat Singh's injuries were very serious. She couldn't even stand up. She had to sit in a wheelchair, which was why Demon had called Chen Zhao and asked him to protect her. Nawat Singh looked haggard, although his life was not in danger. But her body was too weak. Chen, you're here. Dalemore had finished the discharge procedures. Seeing Chen Zhao, she immediately went over to greet him. Chen Zhao nodded and turned to look at Nawats. Nawats, are you okay? Although Nawats was in a bad mood, she wouldn't vent her anger. Moreover, Chen Zhao was here to help her. It's all right, but I feel weak, Nawats said. I can't do anything about that, Chen Zhao said. You've used too much energy. You can only recover slowly. Nawats also understood her current state and nodded slightly. She used Chen Zhao's extraordinary power. She knew very well the price she had to pay for using that power. Normally, it wouldn't be surprising even if he had to pay with his life. Not to mention that he was only lying in bed for half a month. Do your people live in downtown Los Angeles? Knotts shook her head. There are large settlements in the city, but my family's settlement is rather remote. It's in the San Antonio Mountain Forest. Okay, you lead the way. San Antonio Mountain was connected to the LA National Park. It was even larger than downtown Los Angeles, reaching 2,000 square kilometers. It was also very far. The car drove for 2 hours before reaching the entrance of San Antonio Mountain. After that, they couldn't use the car anymore. Navats, how far is it? About 100 kilometers, Navat Singh said. That far? Chen Zhao was surprised. How do your people go back to their families? Helicopter, Navat Singh replied. Then I'll fly you in, Chen Zhao said. This was a mountain area. There were no people nearby. Plus, as long as they didn't fly too fast, no radar in space could find Chen Zhao. Dalemore, stay on my back. Chen Zhao carried Dalemore on his back and lifted Navat's wheelchair at the same time. Then he soared into the air. Neither Dalemore nor Navat Singh had ever enjoyed flying like this. Chen Zhao flew a bit too fast. The air whizzed and slapped their faces. Of course, with Chen Zhao's intentional protection, they didn't feel too uncomfortable. Plus, Chen Zhao wasn't very fast either. Dalemore was very envious. After all, he could fly in the sky without any aircraft. She probably didn't even dare to think about it. Chen, how strong do I have to be to fly like you? Don't think about it, Navat said. That's almost impossible. But the truth is right in front of us. Chen can do it. How strong? Chen Zhao said. So I can't give you a standard answer. Actually, it wasn't that Chen Zhao couldn't give this number at all. According to the supernatural organization's Adu's mana value, he would need about 100,000 Adu's mana value. At least, Chen Zhao had his own small world at this stage. At that time, Chen Zhao already had the ability to fly. However, he could only fly freely after compressing his mana into immortal power. But after that, Chen Zhao could no longer calculate the magic value of the money with the equipment in the association. Chen Zhao didn't know what his current immortal power would be if it was converted into mana. Of course, one didn't have to have 100,000 mana to have the ability to fly. For example, Gaia, Norma, and Jalanash all had between 500 and 2,000 mana. However, they could all fly because of their special characteristics. Gaia and Norma could purely because of their bloodline. Norma could walk in the air after turning into a nightmare, while Gaia could turn into a fire dragon and soar into the sky. Jalanash, on the other hand, had wind elemental magic. However, her flying ability was the weakest. In the distance, Chen Zhao saw a cluster of buildings in the dense forest more than 10 kilometers away. The building wasn't big. There was a building a few stories tall, surrounded by some single houses. There shouldn't be more than 30 families living here. It wasn't as large as Chen Zhao had thought. However, Chen Zhao realized that he couldn't see anyone. He'd thought it was because he was too far away, but when he got closer, even Jalanash and Navats could see him. Chen Zhao didn't see anyone. Chapter 1803. Chen Zhao placed Dalemore and Navats on the ground. There wasn't a single person, or rather, not a single living person. There wasn't a single living person in the entire Singh family's residential area. The Singh family's residential area was very small. It was less than 20 hectares in size. It was surrounded by dense forests. In the center was an 8-story building. There were some houses around it, but there were only about 30 households. Chen Zhao pushed Navat's wheelchair. Which way? Chen Zhao asked. Where are they? Where are they? How come there's no one? Navats was also terrified. The people living here were all her family. There weren't many of them, only about 30 households and less than 100 people. But every time she came back, she would see them. It was impossible not to see a single person. There's the smell of blood in the building, Chen Zhao said. Let's go in and take a look. Navat's body trembled. She realized that things weren't good. Chen Zhao patted Navat Singer's shoulder and pushed her inside. After entering the building, there were blood stains on the ground. Navat's expression worsened. She wanted to speak a few times, wanting to go somewhere else first. But just as the words were about to leave his mouth, he swallowed them back. She was afraid but also wanted to escape. Beside her, Daily Moore's expression was also bad. Just then, there was a knocking sound from the ground. The sound came from afar, but no one was coming. The sound seems to be coming from underground, Qin Zhao said. Is there a secret passage here? I don't know. Navots shook her head. She indeed didn't know there was a secret passage here. Chen Zhao was also surprised. He didn't know what the ground was made of. His little world couldn't even sense the ground. Knock, knock. The sound traveled to the tiles in front. Then there were continuous knocking sounds. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking sounds were disjointed and muffled. This time, it was more hurried and crisp. It seemed like someone was looking for a weak spot and then pounding on the tiles. Navots and Daily Moore were surprised, but they weren't afraid. Qin Zhao was here. There was nothing to be afraid of. Navots had experienced Qin Zhao's power before. She turned around and asked, "What's down there?" "I don't know. I can't sense it." Chen Zhao thought for a moment and didn't say anything else. "Did you find out soon after you lifted the floor tiles?" Chen Zhao went up and crushed the floor tiles. Wow, a child's cry of surprise came from below. Chen Zhao looked down and saw a few kids. When the kids saw Chen Zhao, they immediately turned around and ran back into the tunnel. "It's Xen Li," she recognized one of the voices. "Xen Li, I think it's Xen Li." The children hiding in the underground tunnel heard Navot Singh's voice. One of the girls, who was about 15 or 16 years old, carefully poked her head out. "Sister Navots." Shinli Singh was surprised and overjoyed. She immediately came out of the tunnel. "Come out, it's not the bad guy. It's Sister Knots." 7 or 8 children emerged from the tunnel. They were all younger than Xen Li, ranging from 6 to 12 years old. "Sister Knots, what's wrong?" "I'm fine. Why are you hiding down there? What happened?" "Mom and Dad gathered us here this morning," Shinli Singh said. "Then they hid us down here." Navot's heart sank. This meant that her people probably knew about the attack. They'd also prepared beforehand and hid the young children? Shinli Singh turned to Qin Zhao and said angrily, "Do you know that you crushed the floor tiles and hit my head?" "Yeah, I know," Qin Zhao said, nodding. If he'd known that there were kids down there, he probably wouldn't have used such a violent method. Of course, he'd already done that. Qin Zhao wouldn't deny it. He wasn't hurt, anyway. "Do you think I won't curse you?" Chen Zhao turned to look at Navots. "Can I hit her?" "Shinli, don't be rude to Chen. He's my helper." "How strong is he?" Navots was speechless. "No matter how strong he is, he's definitely stronger than you." "Better than me," Nawat Singh said. "Shouldn't we consider looking for your people?" Chen Zhao reminded. Nawat Singh's mood had just calmed down when she saw the children of her clan. Now, she became serious again and nodded. "Sister Navots, I'll push you." The other children followed around. Chen Zhao walked in front. "These children seem to be awakened bloodlines or witches," Daily Moore said. "That's not strange. This should be a special residential area that only accepts spiritualists," Qin Zhao said. "Spells that aren't convenient to use in the outside world can be used here without any restrictions." Ding! The elevator came down and the group entered. "Which floor?" Qin Zhao asked. "8th floor," Shinli Singh answered first. The elevator reached the 8th floor. As soon as they got out, all the children screamed. Bodies. Dozens of bodies. Most of the corpses were the children's relatives. Clearly, there'd been a massacre here. Chen Zhao wasn't used to this. They were spiritualists, but they were actually commoners. Their bodies were piled together. There was a blood-smeared magic array in the middle. Navots covered her mouth. She couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Dalamore's face was also filled with shock. It was also her first time seeing such a bloody scene. Shinli Singh had already charged forward. She dragged a corpse from the pile of corpses and cried out, "Daddy." But just then, large amounts of blood suddenly gushed out of the pile. The blood flowed into the magic array in an arc. A blood-colored demon popped its head out of the array. Chen Zhao went up and stepped on the demon's head before it could completely show itself. "Go back." "But do you know who I am?" "Your head didn't shatter." Chen Zhao didn't care who it was. He attached himself and punched the demon's head. Bang, the demon's head was smashed. But the magic array didn't stop. It still summoned the headless demon. This wasn't the end. A second demon popped out, then a third, a fourth. More and more demons were summoned. Chapter 1804. More than a dozen blood demons were displayed before him. When the children saw these blood-colored demons, they were so scared that their faces turned pale. Daily Moore hugged two children who were already scared silly. The two buried their heads in Daily Moore's chest, not daring to look at the terrifying demons. Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at the demons. Knots, do you know what they are? They're immortal Balak. Balak means demon in our language. They have indestructible bodies. Knots looked at the headless corpse. Of course, indestructible doesn't work on you. The Romani language was a small language. In the Romani language, immortal meant indestructible bodies, souls that couldn't be purified, and power that couldn't be used up. In the Singh family, immortal Balak was very widespread. Especially the relatives in the settlement, they knew the immortal Balak even better. In the family, immortal Balak was their greatest enemy. Their ancestors had once fought with immortal Balak and successfully killed him after a fierce battle. Chen Zhao twisted off the head of a blood-colored demon. Their joints aren't as hard as their heads, Chen Zhao said. Not Singh and Delamore rolled their eyes a little. Is there a difference to you? On the other hand, Xen Li Singus and the other kids were shocked. As inner disciples, they obviously knew about immortal Balak. However, these terrifying Balaks were like bugs. Chen Zhao broke their necks one by one. Or their heads were smashed. It seemed that the legendary immortal Balak wasn't that scary. However, Chen Zhao had to admit that their bodies were indeed very hard. At least, if Chen Zhao didn't use his heavy and high-speed punches, these blood demons could often stand up unharmed. To the weak, their bodies were indeed indestructible. Even armor-piercing bullets from modern weapons probably couldn't penetrate their bodies. Not sighed. In her eyes, these powerful blood demons were so weak. Before Chen Zhao, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. She also knew that Chen Zhao hadn't used his true power. But even so, the power he displayed was already on the level of a crushing suppression. A few minutes later, Chen Zhao killed the last immortal Balak. Chen Zhao didn't use his full power, not even in his normal state. Otherwise, he would have killed them all. Of course, this included the 8-story building. But when Chen Zhao killed the last undying Barak, all the corpses started fusing together. In the end, they merged into a supersized immortal Balak. Human, you didn't expect me to revive again, did you? The blood-red demon looked at Chen Zhao proudly. Yes, I didn't expect that. Chen Zhao nodded. How are you feeling right now? Fear? Despair? Or regret? It's great to be able to kill you again. Chen Zhao didn't care about the rules and attacked directly. He went up and pressed the gigantic blood-colored demon to the ground. The floor collapsed in an instant, falling to the next floor. The lower floor collapsed again, layer by layer, and finally fell to the ground. The ground cracked like a spiderweb. Everyone came to the hole and looked down. They saw that Chen Zhao was holding the head of the super-large immortal Barak. How did it end so quickly? Everyone couldn't believe it. They'd thought that it would be a huge battle. Especially Nawat Singh. She thought that Chen Zhao would have to use his true power. She could vaguely feel that the super-large immortal Barak's power was already the same as when she'd borrowed Chen Zhao's power. In the end, Chen Zhao surprised her again. It didn't take much effort to finish off this super-large immortal Balak. Everyone came to the bottom floor. Xinli Shingles looked at Chen Zhao in shock. When they first met, she didn't think that Chen Zhao was strong at all. But now, she finally saw Chen Zhao's power. It was even terrifyingly strong. Mr. Chen, help me get revenge. I can pay anything, including myself. Xinli Shingles looked at Chen Zhao, her eyes filled with seriousness and sincerity. If you want to sell yourself to me, you better contact my lawyer and ask if she has a way to bypass the underage protection law. I'm serious. I'm serious too. Chen Zhao shrugged. Knots, you have to pay attention to the education of your children. If they only practice magic and don't learn culture, they won't be able to find a job in society. Chin, apart from these children, the others are all dead. Knott's expression was extremely dark. Do you know who did it? Warren, the one who attacked me. He's from the Akuk family. Do you have a grudge against him? All the Roma have a grudge against the Akuk family. Knott's was angry, but Chin Zhao didn't hear much hatred in her tone. But the Akuk family was once the leader of the Roma. Their family once tried to form a country. Isn't that a good thing? You Roma people have never had a real country and have always lived as nomads. This has also caused you Roma people to bear a lot of stigma. If you build a country, you will have more living space and the right to speak. The Akuk family wants to use the lives of all the Roma in exchange for a chance for their family to build a country. Do you think such a country has anything to do with the Roma? At that time, apart from the Akuk family, everyone else with Roma blood will die. And then? Did the Akuk family fail? Of course. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any Roma in the world. So is Warren going to do the same thing again? No, it's impossible for him to succeed. In the past, the Cook family was the leader of the Roma, so the Cook family could sacrifice the entire Roma as a leader. But now, not only are they not the leader of the Roma, but they are also the enemy of the Roma, so they can no longer use this magic to threaten us. So what does the Akuk family want to do? Take revenge on all the Roma? I don't know what they want, but I think they're definitely plotting something. I don't want to know about the plot. Just tell me where the Akuk family lives and where Warren is. Chapter 1805. Most of the time, conspiracies didn't matter. Chin Zhao wasn't a cop. Nawats and the kids only wanted revenge. Therefore, what they pursued was never the truth. The truth only satisfied curiosity. Revenge, on the other hand, brought pleasure. Unfortunately, Nawats didn't know where the Cook family was either. She didn't even know if it was in North America. What do you plan to do with these kids? Chin Zhao asked. I'll take care of them. I'll help too, Dailymore said. There were so many kids and a disabled person. Chen Zhao couldn't fly them out directly. Unless he tied them all up. Chen Zhao held the end of the rope. But now, the kids were panicking and lost. They were very fragile and couldn't take any stimulation. Chen Zhao decided to just walk out. Not Singh asked Chen Zhao to burn down the entire Singh family's residential area, along with the corpses. In the flames, the kids cried heart-wrenchingly. The fire was like the anger in everyone's heart. Only Chen Zhao was calm. In fact, he was calm inside too. When he first saw the corpses, he was indeed angry. But maybe it was because he was an outsider. The dead and the kids had nothing to do with him. So, Chen Zhao realized that his anger seemed to calm down. Of course, it was mainly because Chen Zhao didn't have so many emotions. Chen Zhao didn't have the thought of seeking justice for them or fighting to the death with the murderers. It wasn't that Chen Zhao didn't have a sense of justice, but it wasn't that strong. The path in the forest was very difficult, but Chen Zhao didn't have much of a choice. The kids could make it through a mountain road of almost 100 kilometers, but Chen Zhao couldn't. Even if they ran on the road, it would take them almost a day to run 100 kilometers. Plus, it was on the mountain road. With the kids' skills, it would take them 2 days even if there were no accidents. After a few hours, the sky was already dark. You guys rest here. I'll go hunting, Chen Zhao said. Dailymore, I'll leave this place to you. Dailymore nodded. Come back quickly. Dailymore looked at the forest and was a bit scared. Chen Zhao flew into the sky. Xan Li and the other kids watched Chen Zhao disappear into the night sky with shining eyes. They were all children who had been exposed to magic, although the duration of exposure was different. However, they all knew that spiritualists that could fly were very rare, and most of them were very powerful. Chen Zhao flew back to get the RV. Chen Zhao made a round trip at night. Chen Zhao only needed a few minutes to cover the 200 kilometers. If Chen Zhao used full speed, he would be even faster. However, if the speed was too fast, the body's heat source reaction would be too strong. It was very likely that the American air defense system would capture it and then attack you with a tomahawk for no reason. Therefore, he only flew at a low speed. The round trip took more than 10 minutes. Chen, where's the prey? Daily Moore looked at Chen Zhao's empty hands. Chen Zhao took out the RV. What do you think of this prey? You left just now to get the RV? Daily Moore looked at him in surprise. What's the use of this trailer? Get in. I'll carry it and fly out. It's too troublesome to just walk like this. Both Daily Moore and Nawats Singh looked at Chen Zhao in shock. You can do that? Why not? Let's all go. Soon, the 2 and the 8 kids experienced the feeling of a roller coaster. Chen Zhao supported himself under the RV. The flying speed wasn't fast, just like a normal car. It wasn't very high either. It was only a few dozen meters above the forest. This experience made the kids forget their pain for now. After an hour, they finally reached the forest. Chen, my house is a bit small. Can you let them stay at your house for the next 2 days? Daily Moore asked. I'll borrow a big house from my mother tomorrow. I need to do some preparation, cleaning, and decorating. Sure. Chen Zhao nodded and turned to the kids. You can stay at my place, but you can't use magic. Chen Zhao didn't use a heavy tone. However, the kids clearly still respected Chen Zhao. So, they all nodded obediently. The kids in the RV didn't play or laugh. They were all very quiet. Returning to reality, they fell into pain again. Nawats, your parents aren't among them, right? Chen Zhao could only feel her anger, but not much sadness. My parents passed away long ago. Oh, sorry. It's okay. Nawats didn't take it to heart. What's the future like for these kids? I don't know. No one could answer this question. Send me and Daily Moore home first. After sending them home, Chen Zhao drove home. Feilai, have the underlings make dinner. We'll have some special guests. Chen Zhao dialed Feilai's number. What guess? A bunch of kids who just lost their parents. Got it. When Chen Zhao drove into the villa, Feilai was already waiting for him in the garage. Feilai's heart was softer than Chen Zhao's, so she felt sorry for the kids after hearing what had happened. When Chen Zhao brought the kids out of the car, Feilai's heart ached even more. Among the kids, the youngest was only 5 or 6 years old. Feilai went up and carried the kids. Kids, have you eaten? Chen Zhao and Feilai led the kids into the dining room. These children were really hungry. Most of them only ate breakfast and then nothing else. Feilai, on the other hand, was completely a waitress. She handed food to this child or poured drinks for that child. Chen Zhao took some food and walked out of the dining room. All the kids were wolfing down the food. Feilai suddenly noticed Xin Li Singer's gaze. Miss Feilai, can you adopt us? Huh? Feilai was shocked. She didn't have this thought at all. More accurately, she hadn't thought about it at all. Why do you want me to adopt you? Feilai asked, stunned. Feilai suddenly realized that she didn't reject it. However, she had to explain it to Chen Zhao. She had to respect his suggestions and opinions. This wasn't a small matter. Adopting any child was a big deal, let alone a group of kids. Chapter 1806. Chen Zhao was also caught off guard. Adopt children? And 8 at once? To be honest, Chen Zhao and Feilai were still kids. It was already hard for them to take care of little Jerlin and Larissa. Adopt 8 more children? Ignoring the troublesome legal procedures, Chen Zhao didn't have to worry about that. Their physical and mental health and futures were all things he had to consider. Feilai, do you want to adopt them? Chen Zhao asked. I don't know. When Feilai said this, it meant that she was tempted. Chen Zhao's head swelled. Adopt children, adopt 8 children. Feilai looked up at Chen Zhao. What about you? As long as you give me a definite answer. Yes or no. Feilai gritted her teeth. I want to, but I'm scared. Fine, leave the rest to me. Chen Zhao stood up and walked into the dining room. The children were still wolfing down their food. Only Xin Li looked up at Chen Zhao. Xin Li, why do you want Feilai and me to adopt you? Chen Zhao asked. Because you're powerful. You can help us get revenge. Also, I want to become stronger. Can you represent the other children? Also, we're your grandfathers and grandmothers. Chen Zhao looked at Xinli Sing. If they want to adopt you, I won't be able to legally do so. We don't have any blood relatives within 3 generations. Xinli looked at Chen Zhao calmly. So, as long as you're willing, no one will fight with you. They're like me. They don't have a choice. I need to discuss this with Knots. At the end of the day, they were Knots' relatives, not Chen Zhao's. Moreover, even if Chen Zhao adopted them, it wouldn't be for revenge. It wasn't for revenge, nor was it to train them into killers. Chen Zhao had never thought about adopting them either. Of course, he didn't reject it either. Chen Zhao was someone who didn't have great kindness or evil thoughts. Adopting a child wasn't just about providing food and shelter. He already had 2 little demons at home. Now there were 8 more. Chen Zhao felt his head hurt just thinking about it. Sister Knots can't teach me magic. I can't teach them either, Chen Zhao said. You must have a way to make people stronger, Xinli Sing said with certainty. Stay here for now. I'll think about your idea. Chen Zhao didn't say anything definite. This wasn't something he and Fei Lai could decide. What the child thought was one thing, what Navat Singer thought was another. Now it's me. Chin, what is it? Fei Lai wants to adopt these children. Chen Zhao went straight to the point. On the other end of the line, Navat Singh was silent for a moment. Chen Zhao did not speak either. He waited for Navat's reply. What about the children? Children have this tendency too. Chen Zhao did not say much. I'm fine, Navat said. Protect them. Chen Zhao hung up. Navat's intention was similar to Chen Zhao's. He did not take the initiative to object, nor did he take the initiative to agree. Chen Zhao took a deep breath. This seemed to be big trouble. 10 children. 10 children. What have I done? In the night, Fei Lai turned and rubbed Chen Zhao. Chin, are you asleep? No, Chen Zhao replied. Chen, if you don't want to, I won't force you. Of course not. I like children. I like our home to be more lively. Chen Zhao pulled Fei Lai into his arms. We have this condition. Plus, little Jerlin and little Larissa can have more older brothers and sisters. I suddenly think this is a great idea. Actually, Fei Lai also knew that it was because she couldn't have more children. But she still wanted more children. Okay, Chen Zhao could understand Fei Lai. Chen Zhao didn't object. So what if they had a few more children? Anyway, it was just more effort. The next day, early in the morning, Alex glanced at the time. Anger surfaced on her face. She was furious that Chen Zhao would call her at this time. Chen, if you can't give me a satisfactory answer, I'll make you regret it. Fei Lai and I discussed it. We suddenly want to adopt 8 children. Wait, speak clearly. Alex suddenly became clear-headed. How many did you say? 8. Orphans? Do they have guardians? Age, background, identity? We'll talk about the details in the morning. Alex also felt a bit of a headache. Alex ran over in a hurry. She looked at Chen Zhao and Fei Lai, who were eating breakfast absent-mindedly. Tell me the situation. What's going on? There are 8 children. Their parents died in a fire yesterday, Chen Zhao said. Fei Lai and I want to adopt them. It's that simple. I need their detailed information and identification. I'll have someone send it over later, Chen Zhao said. Alex, will the adoption process be difficult? Fei Lai asked. Do they have any immediate family members? Chen Zhao shook his head. Then it shouldn't be a problem. Will someone come out to fight for custody? If there's no immediate family within the 2nd generation, the court and the Minor Protection Association will determine if there are collateral relatives within the 2nd generation, as well as if they're willing to raise the child and if the child is willing to follow them. If any of them are unwilling, the child will be sent to an orphanage. Then what do we need to do? Nothing much. You just need to prove that you have the income and that your family can raise the child. I'll make the proof for you. Of course, Fei Lai is a member of the Coastal Rescue Team, so it's even better. If you're worried about other problems, you can donate some money to a charity, preferably one for minors. Actually, in America, adopting children was a very utilitarian thing. Of course, from a normal perspective, it was a win-win situation. The orphanage would receive donations to lighten the burden. The adopter would get the child, and the child would get a family and parents. So, in principle, the wealthier the adopter, the better. I'll leave this to you, Qinzhao said. A while later, Knots Singh and Dellimore came, bringing the children's information. Alex met the 8 children and learned about their actual situation. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai also learned all the children's names. Chapter 1807. President, we'll go back tomorrow. West called Chen Zhao. Looks like you didn't find the giant, Chen Zhao said in a mocking tone. If they found the giant, they would definitely send him a message. If they were to come back so suddenly, they must have failed. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't blame them. No one could be 100% sure that they would be able to find the legendary Nordic giants. West's reply was rather boring. President, we actually found the giant and completed the mission. Found it? And completed the mission? Chen Zhao asked in disbelief, his eyes wide. Yes, we found it. West was getting more and more bored. Since you found it, why are you in such a bad mood? You don't seem happy at all. You don't even seem excited. I can't be excited, West said. West said, this mission isn't difficult at all. It's much easier than besieging the Turin. Are the legendary Norse giants weak? No, the real Norse giants should be very strong. The real Norse giants? Isn't the giant the mission was referring to? It's a 2-headed giant with a bit of Norse giant blood in him. He's huge, savage, and bloodthirsty. All of us were fully prepared, but we stepped on a landmine that Klaus had prepared beforehand, and one of our legs was blown off. Qin Zhao was speechless too. One leg exploded by a landmine. Either Klaus had set some super powerful landmine or the giant was really weak. No wonder West was so depressed. He'd rushed over excitedly, but he'd encountered such a thing. Aren't you still in Norway? It's very close to the North Sea. Aren't you going to search for the North Sea monster? The North Sea monster has already been captured alive. It's indeed a shockingly huge monster, over 1,000 tons. I feel like it doesn't live up to its name. Yeah, how boring. Whatever. No matter what, completing a mission is something to be happy about, Chen Zhao comforted. Did you inform Wenxig? Yes, she's in LD now. 3 missions, $200 million. In terms of investment, it wasn't a loss. In fact, it was a huge profit. Of course, this was only applicable to a capable team or individual. If it was the kind of people or teams that did not have the strength, they would probably just be throwing their lives away. Chen Zhao was still on the phone with West. Suddenly, someone tugged at his pants. Chen Zhao looked down and saw a girl tugging at his pants. Mara, what's wrong? I'm not Mara, I'm Sindora, the girl said in a trembling voice. Can I go to the beach to play? Uncle. Chen Zhao realized that he didn't remember the girl's name. To be more precise, he was confused. Xenli, come here. Chen Zhao waved his hand. Xenli walked up to him. Mr. Chen, what can I do for you? Since you're going to be adopted, you can call me uncle from now on. Of course, if you want to call me dad, I won't object. Chen Zhao would not force them to change their surnames and recognize a dad. Especially Xinli Sing. She was already 15 years old, going to be 16 soon. If she called him uncle, Chen Zhao would feel like he was at a disadvantage. Of course, calling him brother wasn't appropriate either. Sure, uncle, Xinli Sing replied straightforwardly. Tell me each child's name and age, Chen Zhao said. I can't remember. The one who ran to you is Sindora. She's the youngest among us, 5 years old, Xinli Sing said patiently. Then she pointed at each child and explained, Mara is that one. She's 6. She's Sindora's cousin. That one is Didala, 12, female. Crow, 11 male. Thurintia, 8, female. Penance, 7, male. But Illich, 7, female. Mara, 6, female. Sindora, 5, female. Including Xinli Sing, who was 15, there were 15 children in total. They were all from the same family. They all had the same surname. Okay, I got it. After lunch, follow me out to buy some daily necessities and clothes for you. Just then Portia came. But she suddenly realized that the entire villa was filled with children. Boss, where did you kidnap so many children? They're all my children, starting from today, Qin Zhao said. Ta. Portia wouldn't believe it. Smiling, Qin Zhao looked at Portia. I've decided to give you a raise. Really, boss? Portia was overjoyed. Of course. Qin Zhao was full of smiles. Looking at Qin Zhao's smile, Portia suddenly realized that something was wrong. Boss, they're really your children? Of course. Qin Zhao nodded. Portia finally understood why Qin Zhao wanted to raise her salary. Boss, I want to quit. Think about the money you owe me. Then you won't quit like this. Portia wanted to cry. If these children were really Qin Zhao's children, then she would undoubtedly be the one with the heaviest burden. Boss, how much will you give me? $1 is a form of encouragement for you. Let's go to the supermarket first. Qin Zhao patted Portia's shoulder. Portia wanted to cry as she drove. She hated driving an RV. She hated children. She hated her boss. The children started making a fuss in the RV. Especially the younger children, they did not have too much hatred in their hearts. Jerlin and Larissa were the happiest. They suddenly had so many friends in one night. Portia cursed Qin Zhao, but she didn't know that Qin Zhao was in even more pain. Qin Zhao realized that the 10 children piled together was like an endless hell. Thankfully, Exenli knew how to help Qin Zhao share the burden. Moreover, she had quite a bit of prestige among the children. They finally reached the supermarket. Qin Zhao and Portia each carried Jerlin and Larissa. The other children scattered like a pack of wolves. Come back. Don't run around, Exenli shouted. Don't make trouble for Uncle. Everyone, push a shopping cart, Qin Zhao said. Pick your favorite toothbrush, towel, bath towel, 2 of your favorite toys, 2 of your favorite snacks, and 3 sets of pajamas. Also, don't disappear from my sight or run around, Qin Zhao added. Chapter 1808. Children entering a supermarket is a disaster. Not only was it a disaster for his parents, it was also a disaster for the supermarket. The only thing missing from every supermarket was a sign at the entrance that said children and dogs were not allowed to enter. 10 children was almost equivalent to the end of the world. Alright, Exenli was only half one. However, older children had their own needs. Uncle, I need some skincare products and cosmetics. The total can't exceed $1,000, Qin Zhao said. Since there were so many children, they couldn't indulge everyone. Qin Zhao was rich, but that didn't mean he could let his kids squander it. Qin Zhao could afford it, but he couldn't let them develop this habit. Since he had adopted them, he had to be responsible for their future. Even in the future, they would have a share of his assets. What Qin Zhao needed to do first was not feed their property to the dogs. If they really raised a prodigal, Qin Zhao would at most make sure they didn't starve to death. From now on, Qin Zhao had to control their spending. Not only them, but little Jerlin and little Larissa's spending also needed to be controlled. Of course, even if it was controlled, their consumption was still much higher than that of their peers from ordinary families. Portia, go to the counter over there and buy 10 cell phones. Does little Larissa want one too? Yes, treat everyone equally. Adopt a child who is not related to you by blood. What was the most difficult part? It was to treat them equally. No matter how one treated their own children, they should give them the same affection and gifts. You can't just say that you don't want to buy gifts for your children. Conversely, a child's mentality is very fragile. Qin Zhao didn't want to leave a shadow in the child's mind. Of course, adopting other children would also be beneficial to little Jerlin and little Larissa. They had role models, and their brothers and sisters were their role models. After leaving the supermarket, Qin Zhao could only take the things that everyone else had bought in the supermarket. Even Portia couldn't carry them all. There were simply too many things. Boss, where are we going next? To the Baron's mansion. The whole family went to the Baron's mansion in a grandiose manner. When Zola saw that Qin Zhao had brought so many kids here, she felt a chill run down her spine. Similarly, he was startled. Zola, these are my children. I adopted them. Zola's mouth was wide open, her face full of shock. Of course, she would not say anything unpleasant in front of the children. However, she couldn't imagine what it was like to adopt so many children. Mentality? Chen Zhao was about to explode. But what could he do? Were they going to tell the kids that they had been refunded? So be it. He couldn't let the children's mentality explode, right? Today was only the first day. There was still a long way to go. Even if Fei Lai wanted a refund, Chen Zhao wouldn't agree. Do you have enough designers here? Design 3 outfits for each of them. Chen Zhao couldn't let the 3 pillars of the Baroness be responsible for so many children's clothes. If that was the case, it would be looking down on them too much. The 3 of them were on good terms with Chen Zhao, so Chen Zhao had to give them face. Zola didn't hold back and called over a dozen designers. Baroness was such a big brand. Of course, it wouldn't only have 2 or 3 kittens. Apart from the 3 pillars, there were dozens of ordinary designers and even more designers' assistants. To Zola, dozens of outfits were less than an hour's worth of transactions. Chen Zhao also asked a designer to design 2 outfits for Portia. Chen Zhao and Zola went to the office to drink coffee. Chin, I really don't understand why you suddenly want to adopt children. It's not me. It's Fei Lai who wants more children. Then she can have them herself. She can't. There's something wrong with her body. Then little Larissa, she didn't get pregnant through normal means. Chen Zhao didn't say it clearly. Zola would fill in the blanks herself. To be honest, Zola said emotionally, I really admire your courage. After all, they had adopted 8 children and 2 of their own. That was 10 children. As someone who had been through it, Zola knew how difficult it was. It wasn't a monetary investment. Both she and Chen Zhao had enough money. Not to mention raising 10 children, even if it was 100 children, they could still afford it. What they really paid was emotional investment and handling chores. The older children were rebellious while the younger ones were dependent. Chen Zhao didn't dare to say that he could raise them all into talents. However, he was confident that he wouldn't turn them into naughty children. It was already evening when Chen Zhao returned home. Portia realized that there was no one in the house. But dinner was ready. Portia was completely speechless. As expected, this place was haunted. Fei Lai started eating as soon as she came back. A few girls surrounded Fei Lai and chatted with her. Chen Zhao brought the boy to play on the beach. Other than Chen Zhao, there were only 11-year-old Kilo and 7-year-old Binance in the house. Kilo was a bit cowardly and introverted. Binance was like a kid and was very active. Kilo, what element are you in? Uncle, I'm strength enhancing, Kilo answered with his head lowered. Chen Zhao was speechless at Kilo's magic. Usually, spiritualists with strength-enhancing spells were very outgoing. Even Chen Zhao, who was usually cheerful, was actually a hot-tempered person. However, Kilo was actually a strength-enhancing element despite his introverted personality. Uncle, I'm elemental water type. Look at my magic. Binance showed Chen Zhao happily. Binance only knew 2 very weak water-type spells. One was Water Ball, and the other was Water Arrow. Impressive. Chen Zhao patted Binance's head. Kilo hesitated for a while and looked up at Chen Zhao. Uncle, you're also strength-enhancing, right? Chen Zhao nodded. Then can you teach me how to become stronger? Training your body is the most important thing for you. If you want to use your power to the extreme, you must first be able to withstand it. If you can't even withstand your own power, it's useless no matter how strong your magic is. Then how can I become as strong as you, Uncle? Both being strength-enhancing, the battle yesterday had left a deep impression on Kilo. He never knew that strength-enhancing spells could be so powerful. Just like I said before, keep training. I'll arrange a training schedule for you tomorrow. Perfect. I'll introduce you to a friend. King Kong come out. /35_. 9 Heavens Divine King. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.